there will be no real non-controlled currency in the world.
We're coming for you, banks.
Listening to different podcasts, like in a whole different reality, which they think completely different things about Bitcoin.
They have got my money in their banking system. I should be able to access it, right?
Appler is live.
There's a good number of fucking, pretty smart Bcashers.
Hello and welcome back to the Bitcoin Cash podcast, following Bitcoin Cash on its rise to global reserve currency. This is episode 159, Knots Navigation and Price of Purity, featuring JC, formerly known to me as Barack Obama on Twitter. Today is Sunday, the 31st of August, 2025. I'm your host, Jeremy. Jet is doing the producing. Quick check on the price: 200 to 1, or a little better. BCH USD $547.14, down a little there. 1 BTC sat buys 198.3 BCH sats, flat there, but you know, it is what it is. 1 ETH buys 815 megasats, so BCH has improved on the ratio there. Selene 30-day 559 users, and the Tokenaut TVL 13,300 BCH. Quick reminder, you can jump into the listener survey at bitcoincashpodcast.com/survey, SURVEY, and in 5 minutes fill out the 20 questions and be part of the results when we discuss that on an upcoming episode. Right, straight into it. Today, our guest JC is a Bitcoiner, a Knots advocate, and a spicy Twitter poster. That's at least how I have come to know him. He's given us a little clip for his intro that Jet will play here, and then I'm sure he'll elaborate. Let's hear it.
When I was just like a guy in a motel room with a laptop trying to figure out ways to get money out of the internet. I kind of moved away from home at 19 years old, went to another state where I didn't know anyone. I stayed in a place that was $20 a night, got involved with my communities on the internet, basically. So when Bitcoin came out, it instantly made sense to me. Here's a way now that you can have money that nobody can censor or stop. I did buy my first Bitcoin for $47. Imagine getting into something that nobody knows what it is. I was never a saver. Bitcoin actually created an internet money, kind of allowed me to not have to engage too much with the dollar system and to do what I want to do. With Bitcoin, though, I started realizing, well, the more that I save, the more Bitcoin that I get, the more money that I have. Just made me, anytime I had extra money, put into Bitcoin. My uncle, he lost tens of thousands of dollars experimenting with what he saw on YouTube. Now he's 100% on Bitcoin. I don't think people understand. There's not enough Bitcoin in existence to facilitate a 2% exposure in people's portfolios by default. I mean, that's easily $10 million per coin right there. And that doesn't even include the race from these institutions to have Bitcoin for themselves. Bitcoin doesn't have any price. It's priced inelastic. So the only thing that can happen is the price goes up. At $1 million Bitcoin, a sat is worth a penny. Once more people have Bitcoin, then you'll see a demand for spending.
All right, there we go. JC, how'd you get into Bitcoin?
Yeah, so I used to be in a group called 2600 back in the day. It was or still is around. It's like a tinkering, hacking, we say the word hacking, people get the wrong idea, but hacking isn't really breaking into people's computers. Hacking is messing with stuff, figuring out ways to do things, testing systems for what they can really do. It's definitely not black hat stuff. It was more, people would show up and they'd make their own PC boards to interface with the mall's Wi-Fi or whatever, just for fun. Just doing cool things. And I was in that. I was in some freaking groups, such as phone hacking. We had all kinds of, I was a kid too. So, we would do childish things. But we wouldn't hurt people, but just we would have fun on the internet. I was and I lived by myself. After 19 years old, I kind of just wanted to do my own thing. My parents didn't really relate with the whole, anything, computers and internet wasn't really a thing back then. There were no, it was a different kind of culture. So I was kind of alone in that I wanted to spend time on the internet with my friends all day. But Bitcoin came out of that. And when Bitcoin came out, it made a lot of sense to me because we were already using Hashcash. I was using Hashcash naturally. That's Adam Back's proof of work implementation that he made before Bitcoin. We needed it because I was using decentralized IRC. It was a special IRC called Invisible IRC. And normal IRC is great, whatever, but whenever we would make our hacking rooms, they would always ban us because hacking is one of the things not allowed to talk about. And so we needed censorship resistance. So Invisible IRC ran like with nodes, like how Bitcoin does. And whenever you're on the IRC, it would like send your, it would like onion route, kind of like Tor, the IRC client to the other people that have the client running, so that we could basically create our own decentralized network to chat. Problem is, you need some kind of Sybil resistance for things like usernames and stuff, because there's no centralized database. So one person could just like register every single username if they wanted. There's no way to enforce like network rules, universally, because we all are the network individually. So we used Hashcash for things like ID generation. Hashcash let you create proof of work tokens, but you couldn't trade them because there was no double spend protection. So you could generate a proof that you put hash into something, but then you couldn't like trade it around, because if you gave it to somebody the proof, they could also use the proof. So you needed a unique proof. And there was no like central database of proofs. So basically just that one source that you're giving the proof to would know if they've already received that proof before or not. And so you could use that to do proof of work so that you could earn your username. And then that's how we had Sybil resistance on the chat. So anyway, when Bitcoin came out, it already obviously made sense to me because it's already kind of like using centralized tech. And I was like, holy shit, this is like the same thing, but for money. Like now we have like centralized money. That's crazy, and I just, I talked about it for a long time before I ever bought any. It was really hard to buy. I mean, like, it wasn't like you just go online and put your credit card or whatever. You couldn't buy it. So I had to eventually when what was it called? Local Bitcoin. Eventually, when Local Bitcoin was a thing, and I heard about it, I was like, cool. And I met somebody up on at Starbucks. Got my first Bitcoin there. I wanted to get a half one because $50 was too much money for me, but the guy wouldn't get off his couch for $25. So I had to agree to pay him $50 for a whole one. It's a lot of money for me.
Tough break.
I know, because I wasn't really going to use it for anything. I just wanted it to be like, this is cool. This is cool shit. I just want one because it's, it seems like a good like thing. I'm already in that community pretty deep, not the Bitcoin community, but the online hackerish community. So I just felt like it was something I should have. I didn't actually expect to use it anytime soon, and I didn't use it for a very long time. Just actually, as soon as I bought it, it wasn't something we really thought about. I wasn't like, I wish I was more in the Bitcoin community proper, but I wasn't. It was more of an adjacent thing that I was aware of but not involved with. And it actually wasn't until the block wars that I started getting a lot more involved, because up until then, I took for granted that Bitcoin was just this thing, this work. I didn't know much about like the specific operation of it. I just assumed it was, hey, everybody runs their node, totally decentralized. The rules are what they are. That's it. We're good. I can come back to it whenever, and it'll be the same. Block wars got my attention because I realized there were people trying to change it. And that's when I realized, oh, maybe I should be involved, because like I didn't realize that, that was something that could happen. So, and then I had to start digging into more of the politics of Bitcoin.
Yeah, amazing. So a couple of things on that. Firstly, phone phreaking, that makes me think of Julian Assange. He was into that as well. Did you have any kind of contact with him?
I didn't have contact with him. I had contact with a lot of people around him. And one of the people that I had contact with was so we had this little group called Folks. It was a private group. It was called a blast group. And I don't expect anybody that's listening will know what this is, but if somebody does, will be like, oh my God, blast group. But a blast group basically was like an SMS server, a text server. When you text the main number, it would blast your text out to everybody in the group. So it was like a way we could anonymously all talk in a group using our phone. And it was like a chat room. Because when you text the server, it would give you your username and it would blast that text back out to everybody else with your username on it. So people would say like JC said whatever, and then somebody else would text that central number, and they would blast it back out to like 200 people, whatever, and we could all talk. And it was called a blast group, basically blasting our text out to everyone without like giving everybody your number. And it was a blast group, and it was run by Adrian Lamo, and I was one of his admin. So it was like 200 people. It's like 3 admin, me as one, and Adrian Lamo was a big guy. At the time, if you Googled like best hacker in the world, he'd be one of the ones that pop up. Bradley Manning, now known as Chelsea Manning, had reached out to Adrian about this little thing that he found that wanted to leak, and wondered what he should do. And so I was very close to that when actually Adrian, and we weren't proud of this. I didn't have any say in this, but Adrian, because he was already on federal probation for hacking, when Bradley went to Adrian and mentioned that, he had this inside information that he was putting on WikiLeaks or whatever, which was the first big leak that, you probably heard about, was scandalized. Adrian went to the feds about it. He went to his like probation people or whatever about it, because in his mind, they're probably already watching him anyway. And when he told him that, now if he keeps it a secret, he'll be complicit and he'll probably go back to prison. So as soon as he told him, he was like, fuck, now I basically have to tell, or they're going to know that I'm like hiding this. So he went and he snitched, and I'm not proud, and we weren't proud that he snitched. And it kind of was a big thing that fractured the group, but that, became national news, and everybody knew who Bradley was after that. And Adrian ended up dying a little bit later. I don't know, probably from overdosing on medication. He was kind of one of those. He's a really smart guy, but he's one of those guys always like trying to hack his mind with medication. He's always on something or some combination of something. He wasn't healthy, man. He actually he used to go, before he was like well known, he used to go with a homeless hacker, because he would just basically couch surf place to place. Whoever was like welcoming and had a couch for him, he'd stay there for a few days, and then he'd find another one. So he wasn't a healthy guy. I mean, mentally mostly. But I mean, he was a good guy. Other than that, he snitched on Chelsea or Bradley, whoever. But I kind of understand why he did. I don't know what I would have done in that situation. But because I mean, it's like they probably know anyway as soon as because if you're being watched by the feds like that, like your communications aren't secret. And she kind of just like randomly messaged him on like I think like AOL Instant Messenger or something. So it wasn't like a private channel. So anyway, yeah. So that was my closest link to Assange. I never spoke with Assange personally or anything, but there was a lot of parallel things happening, and Assange was a big. We knew him. Now there were a lot of other freakers at the time that we did get to talk to, like Kevin McNick. He was one of the well-known hackers at that time, kind of old school days. Another one, I'm forgetting his last name now. I don't want to get it wrong. But I could give a shout out to some of my OG friends, but I don't know if they watch or care, or maybe they don't even want to be doxxed, so maybe I won't. Yeah. So anyway, it was a good group though, and it was, I have fond memories of those days. I almost feel like the world is so much different now. I don't feel like we could do that anymore. Maybe I'm totally wrong. Maybe there's kids out there doing exactly what I was doing, and we just don't see them because that's kind of the nature of what they do. But it just feels like the world isn't. I don't know. I mean, it could be totally like, I guess probably nobody knew we were doing those things, but like, it feels like the world's a totally different place now.
In what way?
I feel like, it's a good question. I just can't imagine people doing the things that we did because I feel like, I could be naive here, but like a lot of things we did seem like a big deal, but like feds never seem to care. And I feel like maybe they would care more now, but maybe I'm totally wrong. Maybe if we did the same things, like they still wouldn't care. Like, I don't know. I guess that's the point, like, of like a lot of the cyber crime stuff is mostly like a threat more than like an actual, like you don't go and like spam a knockoff line like 2,000 computers randomly because you're worried if you do, like feds are going to knock on your door. And why would you do that? Like you didn't do it for money. You just did it to be stupid, right? So like you just wouldn't do it because like, I don't want to go to prison for just being stupid, like throwing rocks at people's windows, basically. But you could do that kind of stuff all the time back then, just to kind of prove, just to be cool. It was like a childish thing. Like example of a child, like I did this when I was literally 14 years old, like I learned how to IP scan. First thing I did when I learned how to IP scan and look for public networks was find everybody's shared printer and then print my alias on all their computers saying, I own you, and I just did this to like hundreds of printers and like hundreds of pieces of paper, just screw your public printer, it's like 14 doing this, but like, it's a stupid thing, right? Like it's literally like a stupid thing to do, but it was cool when you're 14 and you just want to like, that's what they get for having a public printer. I don't know. I just thought it's the kind of thing that you do when you're a kid.
I think the kids are still doing it. I think it's just a lot more like advanced because you had the Flipper Zero thing that blew up.
Oh yeah.
And then even before that, I built something called a Ponagachi, and that's just like, it's a Tamagotchi type thing, but its whole thing is collecting Wi-Fi handshakes. And then you could set it up so that it sends those handshakes off to a service to decrypt the passwords and whatever. And I remember I got my dad's Wi-Fi password just walking around the city. And I went to him and I was like, man, you got to change this. And there's a whole argument. Like, it was just like, there's no numbers in it even. It was just like one word basic text. I was like, this is dumb as shit, man. You got to do something about this.
I got a buddy in cybersecurity and I argue with him because I like to make, I shouldn't say this here, but I don't care. I like to make my stuff super convenient. So like Wi-Fi password. Now, first of all, I'm well aware of the things on my network and the attack surface that my network has. I'm not going to put like some computer with a bunch of Bitcoin on my network. That would be foolish. And if I did, I'd have a separate SSID or even a separate router that would be for that. But for like the same network that's got like my TVs and whatever on it, or that a friend would use if they come over, they want to stream and put like YouTube on the TV or whatever, I'll put a super easy password because I want it to be super easy for my IoT devices. I want it to be super easy for my friends who have their tablets. I just want it to be super easy. I don't want like this huge complicated password every time somebody needs to get on the network, or I've got like some little IoT device that's like got a Pi screen and you got to tap password in it. It's annoying, right? So like I want simple password. And I do have, alerts. So any new device that comes to the network, I'll know. And then of course I can see what devices are doing what, how much data they're using. I feel like that's enough for now, since I don't expect anybody's going to randomly hack my network. The most plausible thing would be if somebody wants to try to steal my internet because they don't want to pay for internet. Okay. Like that probably is a thing that happens, of course. But other than that, I don't see somebody just like trying to maliciously, like, for what? If somebody did hack my network, what are they going to do? Like spam my TV with silly videos? Okay, you can do something like that. But like, I will then have to put a more powerful password and get more serious about my security at that point. Worst case scenario, okay, no big deal. But in the meantime, I don't expect it's going to happen. So until it happens, easy passwords for me.
I did the same thing with like the smart TVs and shit. It's like there's an untrusted network and I don't care what happens there because none of my personal computers are going to be on that.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, and that's what So my buddy's like, but you can't do that. It's like, I'm not probably going to have my network hacked. If I do, the only thing I'm actually going to be inconvenienced by is this long ass password. Like, and that's my threat.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, maybe the world's different now, and I think it is different, but I think there's also an element that maybe you're different, like you can't imagine doing the things that you did when you're a teenager because you're not a teenager anymore. And I think
when you're an adult, you have
we all have that.
You have things, you have a house, you have a family. You can't be, throwing rocks through digital windows, maybe getting sued or have criminal action against you. You're not a kid anymore. It's like a bigger deal. If I was 16 and the feds knocked on my door, I probably wouldn't even be that scared. Now I would be. I'd be like, holy shit, what did I do? I don't want feds getting involved with me. I'd rather, I've got a family. I've got important things that I do. I've got assets. I don't want to be, it's not worth doing criminal things when you're older.
Yes, or borderline stuff. Let's say this show does not condone any criminal activity. Also, you said about it was not easy to buy Bitcoin. This is something that I think a lot of people struggle to really understand. I mean, maybe not people who are in Bitcoin by now, but people who are not in it. I love that thing. Oh, if Bitcoin was $10, I would have bought some if I'd known about it. Firstly, it's like, one, you didn't know about it. And two, there is no chance in hell you would have done that. You are imagining Bitcoin now that you could have got then when it was nothing.
Robin Hood and ding. You know?
Exactly. I would have been the genius way ahead. No, you wouldn't have. Like, getting some was really a trial that, like, even so for me, it was, I think I've told this story before. So I was in 2013, right? In the latter part of 2013. And the way I originally got some was by a site called VirWox, which was Virtual Worlds Online Exchange. It was kind of like a Mount Cox type of situation. And you had to go on there and buy credits for this game, Second Life, which you might have heard of. Their in-game currency was Second Life Lindens, and you could swap for you could swap the Second Life, you could buy Second Life Lindens and then swap that for Bitcoin, but you had to kind of know how to do it, and you had to have looked in, dug through several layers of like confusing nonsense to figure this out. And I got so my first Bitcoin, I got at an 18% markup. And I was thinking, yeah, no problem. This is going to moon like 18%, no problem. But if you showed that, like, even just that economically, to like, that's nonsense.
I mean, if people do it, I don't know what the hell they're doing. I don't know if you see it. There's ATMs around me, Bitcoin ATMs now, which used to be like such a novel thing. But there are a lot of them now, and I see like people that don't. I mean, they usually. I think maybe I know what they're doing. I don't know, but like. Because it's usually like people that almost look homeless. Like, we always go to the Bitcoin ATM and paying like 18%. Like, they're paying like 150 grand per Bitcoin. They're only buying like $100 or $200 worth. But still, like, I don't think they're buying it for speculation. I think they're buying it because they want to buy drugs or something.
Yeah.
There's always people going to those ATMs. And I'm like, what are those people doing? You can't necessarily ask them, but they don't look like, and why are they using this ATM and paying so much for it? Like, they're obviously not, I don't think that, could it be that like some, I don't know, I don't want to assume they're low income or whatever, but I don't know, just kind of like look at them and they're wearing like dirty clothes and they don't look like they have a job because they don't look presentable for a job. But they're putting $100 in this Bitcoin ATM machine. And you got to wonder, like, why? Does he think he's going to get rich on that $100, or he's probably using it? He's probably using it for something. Who knows what?
Yeah, you never know. Exactly. I always think about that too as well. Like, back in the day, I used to watch the blockchain.info with the transactions coming in like one at a time.
I always do
and
that.
you never know, man.
Like, what's that $16 right there? What's that $320 right there? What's that? Sometimes I wonder, like, who, or if I see a big one, here comes $160 million, and it's like, I want to know, like, in the guy's mind, like, somebody with his little ledger or whatever just click confirm on $160 million. That's got to make your brain tingle a little bit when you do that.
Yes. So then you got into the block size wars. You started paying a bit of more attention to what was going on. When did that start, and what was your kind of view? I guess if you already realizing
that I started seeing the politics, I think in 2016, when I started starting to see like some of the disagreements about what Bitcoin should be. I remember, I think it was, I can't remember exactly. I started seeing the node wars. Actually, it's so funny. We're coming back to square one.
Yes.
Because there was the Bitcoin Unlimited node, there was the Bitcoin XT node, and there was a war over like what client you should run. I didn't even realize the parallels here. Because we're going to talk about knots today. It's basically happening again. But and if I remember, Bitcoin XT got to like 15%, 14% of the network. But the significant thing was that they also had like 33% of the hash. So they had a lot of the hash, whereas knots right now, Ocean mining doesn't necessarily run knots, but Ocean miners are knots aligned. They're basically the same team, so to speak. Miners don't really run core either. They don't run core or knots. They have mining clients that they run. So it's not really a fair measure anymore. But with Datum now, the miners on Ocean are running their own block templates, and it's really great. They've been the most profitable miners for the last 2 years. It's actually, we're going to start seeing more hash there. I don't want to skip topics, but it's very encouraging. But anyway, back to the blockchain or block size wars. It was. I was on Reddit, and I wasn't on Twitter, and it was very like, what's going on? And I immediately, because I come from a technical background, the big block aspect didn't make sense to me. That didn't seem like a clever way of scaling. And of course, Lightning was just a whisper in 2016, and there was the 18 months.
It was only 18 months away.
Yeah. 18 months. So, but I still, of course, would, talk about the hypothetical existence of Lightning in the future. And I've become, since then, a very large Lightning advocate around 2018. I started this, not started myself, but I was a co-founder of this group, PlebNet. Don't know if you've heard of them.
I've heard of that, yeah.
Yeah, we became over 1/3 of the Lightning Network liquidity. We had thousands of people running Bitcoin nodes just for PlebNet, just for Lightning. And we would run chat rooms on Spaces, on Bitcoin Spaces. Not Spaces, but it was Clubhouse back then. The Spaces didn't exist yet. It was an app called Clubhouse during COVID, and or COVID times-ish. And so I don't remember if it was 2020 or 2019. But we, like normal people, like soccer moms and family dads and whoever, just normal people, because Clubhouse was a pretty normal people kind of community at the time, and they would see our rooms because they'd be trending and they'd want to know about Bitcoin, and we'd show them how to like either run their own node or buy like one of those node in a box, either the Umbrals. I don't really like Umbral, but or like the MyNode BTC nodes, and just get them set up, get them on the network, help them peer with us, and we got thousands of just non-technical people to run Bitcoin nodes and run their own Lightning nodes for PlebNet. It was really, really fun time. I used to have some PlebNet swag on my desk. I don't anymore. I need to put some more. And that was cool. But skipping a lot. Back to the politics. I was pretty involved in the blockchain wars, and by involved, I mean there's no like official way to be involved, right? It's just like every man for himself.
Yes.
That's what you're doing right now. Like you're involved in like the Bitcoin Cash war still because you're running a Bitcoin Cash podcast.
Yes.
I saw your stuff, like you're Spartan, Yes. So, and it's true. I mean, you are like fighting a very uphill battle. But especially now, like people don't, it used to be you had to talk to Bitcoin Cash guys all the time. And now you never see them anymore. Very rarely anyway. Like you're one of the, I think the only ones that still like tags on Twitter and tries to like say stuff. You're pretty much all by yourself, bro. You got to get your people out there. Back then, you had to like, the narratives were, it was very common to have to get into it with Bitcoin Cash guys if you wanted to talk about Bitcoin, because they'd be in every thread everywhere. And I eventually got into all of the Telegram groups. So I was in the CoinSpice group. I was in some of the official BCH dev groups. I was essentially seen by them as one of like the biggest trolls ever, because I was in every single BCH group, and people would be like, "Why is JC in all the BCH groups?"
This is where we met.
Oh yeah, what was your username on there?
Jet Scythe. I don't think we'd ever like actually had a direct conversation.
I didn't know who you were until now. Of course, I remember your name.
Yeah,
so you know what I'm saying. So you know what I'm saying. You could tell Jeremy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Did you know that? I guess you knew who I was when I came on.
Oh yeah, I when Jeremy told me that you were coming on, I was like, man, I remember seeing this guy. You were in the Anarcrypt Facebook group, right? Like,
I might remember, but I don't usually use Facebook, so
yeah.
So I wouldn't have been on there like chatting. That would be but I do remember you from Telegram mostly. I didn't really chat on. I don't ever really chat on Facebook. If I joined a group, it would just be, I don't know why I would join it, but probably you're misremembering that part. But
well, so I remember. Maybe you weren't in the group, but I remember people sharing your content and like being like, look at this fucking clown, and like giving you hell. And then I remember a year later seeing you come up in the Telegram groups, and I was like, fuck's sakes, like we're going to do this again. And then see you even, CoinSpice, which I don't know what's happened there, but I remember just everyone giving you hell all the time. And it was always entertaining. But
of course, because it was me, the only Bitcoin guy in all of these toxic Bitcoin Cash groups are all memeing.
Oh, no, hold on. You didn't help yourself. You'd post videos of you being like a complete delinquent, and people would be like, "Look at this fucking guy." Like,
well, they would focus on the negative, of course. No, I didn't help it along. I agree. But most of the stuff that I don't know if they would share, but I was there to kind of like every time I'd hear somebody say something bullshit about Lightning, or every time I hear somebody say something bullshit about the next thing on Bitcoin, I was there to tell them why they were wrong. I mean, I've even had debates with Omri, Bitcoin ABC lead dev. He used to be Bitcoin Cash lead dev, because Bitcoin ABC used to be Bitcoin Cash. I've had I was there constantly debunking the bullshit, and that's why I would be in these rooms, just debunking Bitcoin Cash bullshit. And I've done this for a very long time now. Obviously not lately. There hasn't really been anybody.
No need.
Yeah, it's kind of already done. I mean, most of the excuses they used to give back then are no longer applicable. Like, let the market decide was a big one. Let the market decide, bro. Stop trying to tell us what to do. Let the market decide. It's like, okay, at what point is that done? Because I feel like market decide. But so a lot of those talking points, they would have to, they'd have to come up with some new ones at this point, because I don't think you can say let the market decide now. I mean, you can say let the market decide now, but it's less powerful.
On that point, that's a good one to address just briefly, is because I think it's funny that people always post to me, the price chart decline, and they say the market decided. And my response is always, can you tell me the UTC timestamp at which it decided? What was the final price ratio between BTC and BCH? Because if it's decided, that obviously it must have. What's the stopping point? And obviously, I'm being a little bit trollish, but it's kind of because it's true. Like, BCH had a terrible time and still does to this day. Obviously, like we just saw on the slides, 200 to 1. Like, that's not the ratio anybody would have been hoping for on the BCH side 4 years ago, let's say, or even 7 years ago.
No, they all would have told me bullshit if I told them that. No way.
That's right. That's right. But at the same time, it is also true that it's not over till the fat lady sings, as they say in sports, right?
Like, I mean,
well, it could be over. That's the thing. It could be over.
Can you still run BitShares? You remember BitShares?
Yeah, I remember it, but I don't know.
It was like the first Ethereum type thing. It was like the first proof of stake, smart contract thing with tokens and stuff. Like, I wonder if we can run it, because I would say it's dead, right? I mean, yes. but it probably still runs. So, like, you could use the same. You could say, like, well, when did it die? You know what I mean? So, unless it actually,
but it can be over. I think, and I have that on my site. Like, people say, what would convince you that you were wrong? And I have. If there was 100 million daily users on BTC and we were 2 orders of magnitude from global adoption, I'd probably need to switch teams and just find a way to get it over the line. But there's nothing close to that, and I don't see that coming soon. So if we're talking about in 100 years, the whole world will be using cryptocurrency every single day for basically all of their daily transactions, there is going to be a point at which it is just over. But we're not really close to that, at least from my point of view.
I mean, like, couple of things there. I don't think, I do think, I guess, people will use digital currencies as currency. I think the creation of Bitcoin was essentially the start of money in the world. Like, that'll be the time that history sees as like the beginning of money. Like all these other times we see all the other previous monies, the rock money, the whatever money, all the different historical monies. Paper, fiat money will be one of those historical monies, and the real money was created when Bitcoin was created. And so for the rest of history, especially once what you're describing is more kind of happening, and everybody's using Bitcoin or whatever, they'll know that 2009 was the beginning of money. Now, on the other hand, though, there's a lot of practical reasons why everybody won't necessarily be just handing Bitcoin around, especially not layer 1 Bitcoin. Not even scaling aside. I think, when I was watching and trying to catch back up, it's been a long time since I've paid attention to Bitcoin Cash, and I wanted to be prepared for whatever new technological advancements have come out, because I don't want you to be like, because I remember all the
gotcha.
I remember all the technical reasons why it wasn't going to really work, and many of them are very obvious. And I was like, well, surely 5 years later they must have come up with solutions to these, and they're no longer defending ridiculous concepts of layer 1 scaling, for example, because Bitcoin Cash has always been very religious about it's got to be layer 1 or else it's not real, and this whole notion always to me has been silly. You can't even if you like for some reason wanted to, it does not make any sense to just say we're going to scale layer one. Like if everybody in the world is going to use Bitcoin as a currency, you can't expect that like, some guy buying some bubble gum in Taiwan from somebody now needs to be stored on everybody's node. And not only that, but broadcast to everybody's node in real time all the time. Like it's just not, it's
why
the
not?
most inefficient way to run a network is why not. Like not even, like no other large database like Google or AWS works that way. They don't share with each other all the servers to get in sync to say like this is the global state of like Google. They use edge routing and edge servers, and they have databases in one, like, in Thailand or Taiwan, where they'll have, whatever the cache data is for those people. And then data in like my state and even my city will have its own data center, which is a huge data center with millions of dollars worth of computers that are highly optimized. And, they're paying a lot of money to make sure it's like millisecond latency or nanosecond latency, whatever the cutting edge is. And they put all this time and effort into optimizing these networks. And like Bitcoin layer one, decentralized networks are kind of like the opposite of this. It's like some guy's got a laptop, some guy's got a regular computer, some guy maybe he does have a bigger server, but like you want it to be propagating over this entire network, and every single transaction everywhere has to go to each one. We can't optimize that in the way that you can optimize a Google server, even close. I mean, because you don't know what kind of internet lines you're going to go over. You don't know what kind of hardware it's going to be going to. Like Google knows, they plan the paths on the internet, and they also plan the hardware, so everything's standardized or at least planned for, and they are able to put a lot of time and money into optimizing those connections and that latency. That only works that way because of the centralization. It couldn't be like you couldn't run Google search, have it be anywhere. It wouldn't work in a decentralized way where it was just like willy-nilly, everybody runs a Google server somewhere. It would not be, if it did work, it'd be so much worse. It'd be crazy. Like nobody probably want to use it. And Google gets about, last I checked, like 1.5 billion transactions a day. I saw one of your slides. You want, ultimately by 2045, you want up to 5 transactions per day on average for 8 billion people.
Yeah.
It's 40 billion transactions a day. It's like 30 times more than Google currently has. I don't know.
Well,
and so I thought to myself, when I'm seeing this, I was like, okay, so I'm sure that these guys are like, man, I looked into Velma. Maybe there's some like layer 2 stuff going on now, because this is just, you can't keep defending like layer 1 only. It just literally doesn't make sense. And so I'm looking for like layer 2 stuff, because that's the only thing that's going to me, make it like, okay, they're starting to become like reasonable people. But I still don't see it. And so it's like, when you look at what it would take to do 40 billion transactions per second, and I even looked at market industry analysis to see like what is the estimated price of a petabyte in 2045. We don't know, right? But we're not experts on this. I just did some market research, looked at like the industry trends where they try to, there's companies that are hired to plan these things out. Who knows if they're right or not, right? But they've thought about it more than I have, and probably more than you have. And they said a petabyte would still be about $3,000 to $10,000 in 2045. Not said, like, we don't know if they're right or not, right? But like, at least they are like supposedly experts at this and thought about this. Who knows? So from $3,000 to $5,000 for a petabyte at 40 billion transactions per second. Let's ignore like the practicality of getting all this data everywhere out there like that, because that's a lot. Like a laptop couldn't do it. Like if you try to run a website on your computer, a web server, a very efficient web server, like as dumbed down as you can get, like an Apache server or something, like there's no way your computer would be able to take 500 incoming pieces of data per second, which would be 500,000 transactions per second. There's no way your laptop will be able to hold that, not even close. And that's not including verifying the transactions, running the signature checks on them. And that's just like touching them. It'd be DDoS. It'd be like the same thing as me just DDoSing that laptop, knocking off the internet. Now, granted, we could say, well, maybe 2045 would be different, but this is such an order of magnitude more than what seems reasonable that I still don't think a regular consumer computer would handle 500,000 like inputs a second, and then have to run the signature verification and then have to store it forever. It's like it's a massive technical problem that just doesn't even make any sense. I don't even know why somebody would build a system to do that. It just doesn't like.
Well, to have a global monetary system, that's why.
No,
but I mean,
you can use layer 2, and then
well, okay, so So there's a few strands to this. I probably should have made some notes, but so the first thing is, I mean, obviously 20 years in the future is going to look very, very different to now. Technology is exponential. 20 years ago, people wouldn't think that people would be, streaming HD Twitch on their mobile, everywhere, right? Like, so that's one thing, right? But the second thing is that it's not really planned to be for literally everyday consumer hardware. I mean, I would not say that BCH has been sort of very unfairly characterized as, okay, it's all going to be centralized into huge data centers, but there's a midpoint between those, right? It's not like, oh, you bought your laptop at the local electronics store and now you're running a node. It's not going to be that, but it's probably also not going to be, or at least the idea is that it's not going to be, okay, it's packed into some giant data centers, like where you said they're 3 to 10 grand. Let's say, for instance, if it was that, if we're talking about a global currency, okay, per petabyte, right? But even if you make it, significantly more than that, let's say it was like 100 grand, there's still like tons and tons and tons of companies everywhere in the world, as well as rich individuals that would run that no problem, right? That's not like, it's not that every single home user, every little hobbyist node person is going to be running things, but you can still be sufficiently decentralized if you had, say, 100,000 companies globally running $100,000 equivalent nodes, if you know what I'm saying, right?
What's an example now of a nobody pays $100,000 to access the internet today? Companies, that's not, I mean, service providers would come up and people would use those. And those service providers are running it for all the businesses. Like, nobody runs their own payment tech now, and I don't think they'd be incentivized to then either. Nobody, even if they got if let's just say there was some hypothetical benefit to, like, I guess the same benefit, let's make it parallel. Let's say Visa said, hey, if you guys want to like see all the Visa data yourself at your office, you can spend 200 grand, you can install this computer there, and you can like verify all the Visa transactions yourself. I don't think businesses would be like, yeah, I need that. Let me just triple check that I have all these transactions here. Let me go ahead and pay 200 grand for this Visa server. Like, I think they would just like, nah, it's cool, Visa. We'll just keep getting the data from you, buddy. Like, you know what I mean? It just doesn't seem like something that I expect as a behavior that would manifest.
Well, I mean, we'll see. Like, we're talking about, there's going to be obviously like wallet providers, right? That's going to be a huge industry in a way that it's kind of not now for Visa.
Well, and actually, even with wallets, most mobile wallets, even on Bitcoin Cash or Bitcoin Today, most of them don't run nodes on your phone. And I mean, phone is different from your business, but even Bitcoin accepting businesses, a lot of them won't run nodes. They'll hire a payment service provider. Like, I don't know who BCH ones would be, but like OpenNode for Bitcoin. Some of them might run a BTC Pay server, but only the most like technical ones. And because it's cheap, I don't think they'd do it if it was 100 grand or more. Because it's like maybe $500 to do it now, and maybe 1,000 if you want it to be like really nice. And you're not going to have like this, $3,000 to $10,000 petabyte storage needs that are constantly increasing. Because with the block size that it's about your projected 8 billion or 8 billion people, 5 transactions a day is about 70 gigabyte blocks. I don't know if you did the math or not.
Yeah.
And those 70 gigabyte blocks will be creating petabytes, several petabytes per day. So we're talking about tens of thousands of dollars worth of hard drives at my best estimate of 2045 hardware costs. We don't know. I just had to, access industry trend analysis. It's the best we can do. We will both have to, I think, in good faith, just accept whatever the experts say, unless we have some really great argument why they're wrong. But so that's, and if you come onto the network, say a year after everybody else who's already been keeping up with another $3,000 to $10,000 per day, now you've got to times that by 365 or whatever. If you come in 6 years later, times that by, whatever. Like, it's just very expensive. I really don't think you can make a good argument that.
Well, hang on a second. So you're mixing in the later point. So then, because then with the point of it's true that obviously it will be a massive amount of data, even taking into account changes in hardware. But you also definitely don't need to store all of the information on the blockchain forever.
That's true.
It's on the mechanics slide at the end. Like,
right. You just
put in UTXO commitments. Yeah, you put in UTXO commitments. You get the UTXO set from an up-to-date point. everything else is just like most people will be running, even of the people who are running nodes, right? Most
That's a
people
good
will
point.
be running
That's
through
a good point.
nodes.
That makes it a lot cheaper. You'd still have that data running through you, and it's about a gigabyte per second worth of data, but 2045, maybe that's nothing. I can give you that.
That's right.
And I did a little work. It's about 20 modern cores, fast cores running full bore to validate all those transactions. You still need to validate them. I mean, you could do like the SPV type of stuff we do now, and they probably will. But then you're running the risk of, especially on Bitcoin Cash, I say especially because you guys use ZeroConf more, then you're running the risk of like, because it only validates headers, it doesn't actually validate the history. So somebody gets a block in there with a double spend, and you won't know it. So your merchant would be screwed as long as
maybe. I mean, we have already like double spend proofs. There's
to
ideas lower the block time.
Would they solve? Let's just hypothetical. If you guys are technical enough to answer, I didn't look into how this works, but the problem or the concern would be, because right now the way that current SPV works, it's not actually a real proof. It's just like we take the hash of the block and we see that it's a legit proof of work extension of the previous block, and then we just assume it's valid, whatever's in it. And we can look and see like, okay, this was one of the transactions in it. But you could literally, with that model, assuming you had enough hash to get a block, you could put, here's 100 Bitcoin. I just sent it to your wallet, and I could just sign it with any random signature or whatever. And it's gonna be like, okay, I see your 100 Bitcoin. I've got your 100 Bitcoin. Thank you. Would the double spend proofs, the way they are in Bitcoin Cash now, solve that problem for SPV node? Current,
I believe so. Double spend proofs is just a way, that you can get network-wide alerts of like conflicting transactions because the BCH community is not trying to fight against.
If we're going to do the pack, we would do it just on your merchant's node somehow. So like we wouldn't broadcast. Well, the other nodes wouldn't accept it. So if we broadcast this fake signature transaction, like the real nodes would throw it out. They wouldn't even probably wouldn't even alert on the thing because, like, obviously it's fake. It's just a fake signature, right? It's not like a real double spend attempt. It's just a fake signature. So I don't think it would set off that thing. I mean, it would be trivial maybe to like add, if this were happening, like add another trigger and be like, also if you see like some fake signature being broadcast, also tell everybody, hey, be careful if you're on an SPV node, this fake signature. I doubt it works that way now because that's not really a concern now. But you could, I guess, put it there.
People don't have the best solutions for this kind of stuff at the moment because it's basically been, in practice, it's not really an issue, right? The idea is just if you're transacting $10 million, wait for a few confirmations. I mean, especially on BCH, obviously. Right. And if you're spending $5, it's not worth it. It's kind of it's ironic. It's going back to the kids this is what kids will do in like 15 years time, is try to figure out how to scam a merchant for $5.
Imagine being a kid in a world where everybody's using like Bitcoin or whatever, and all the cool things you'd be doing trying to hack the network to like trick your local bubblegum store or whatever to give you some free gum. I mean, like you and all your friends would like, I don't know, isolate their entire network with like a bunch of Sybil nodes and like try to trick them into letting you have free gum all day or whatever. It would be who knows what they could do, but it would be fun to be in that world. And but yeah, so ultimately though, even if we could try to make an argument, I think it would be hard to that layer one global scaling was possible or feasible. It still comes down to like, but then why would you do that? Like, it's still not the best way to do it. And somebody does have to store all those petabytes of data, or we won't have historical records. So somebody is having to store it. I don't think many people would, because it's going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars at best guess to do it. It just seems like even if you could convince me that was like possible, I'd still say it's definitely not even close to the best way. Like,
yes, and so hang on. Here's my response on that point, which is, like you said, the BCH mentality is to shoot for that layer one scaling, but obviously it's also it's not BSV, right? So if things were getting rickety in practice, which they never have, basically because we failed to drive the demand. But if they had, there
are lots of examples where even on BCH, you guys crashed all the nodes trying to experiment with higher block sizes in the past. That was, we were there in the CoinSpice rooms talking about all the fun times the tech failed, which didn't usually make press or crypto news because nobody's paying attention. But
was that before the BSV guys had been like split off and all kicked
no,
out?
it was before
was that?
ABC split. Yeah, before ABC split, there were some examples of times when you guys like got a little too cocky
Too
and
out of hand. Yeah.
and then like they realized, oh wait, we can't just make the number bigger and expect that it's still going to work. There's other optimizations to do to get the nodes to be able to communicate properly. And BSV saw this even more than BCH did because they went crazier. And we saw, but I mean, ultimately the hardware or the software is essentially the same for most important parts. So when they tried to demo like these massive blocks, and then they had like 8 block reorgs because most of the nodes couldn't verify that block in time before it was not the longest chain anymore. So you ended up, by the time they verified that this was a real thing, like they got reorged by 8 blocks because it took so long. And of course, those problems, if it were like the normal operating procedure of the chain, they would have not had such weak nodes, maybe. But these are real problems we've seen in the wild with this approach. It's just objectively.
So hang on. Let me jump in here. So I firstly, I will agree with you that of course there's been all kinds of naivety and problems, certainly historically in the BCH community. I'm a little more confident in it today, but it's still true that we're running on, very limited resources. Like, I'm never going to argue that it wouldn't be better if we had way more money and talent involved in optimizing, all the node software, all the network stuff, the point of sale systems, the wallets, like to the nth degree. Who knows how far those things can go? There's certainly not the money going into it that would get us anywhere close to what is, the best in practice. But then there's also sort of that video, I'm sure you're aware of it, of Andreas Antonopoulos saying how the internet failed to scale, right? Now the BSV people are crazy, right? But they just kind of were like, well, the more it breaks, the better it is, which is again kind of ironic in knots. It's the same people saying, well, you DDoSed our nodes, let's just see how it breaks.
I'd love to talk about that because it wasn't actually an exploit at all.
Can we get to that in 1 second? I just want to finish this one point.
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of in general my attitude to the layer 1 stuff. It can improve a lot, but to get to the layer 2s, like you said, that it's maybe more optimal to do layer 2s, which is something that the BCH community have always had, but I think got a bit lost in the conversation for various reasons.
Naively, I guess, that you would have adopted it by now, because one of those things to me that's so ridiculous, that whole narrative of like we're very religious about being layer 1, like to me that was more of like almost like a BSV level narrative where it's just like people are just chanting the song and they're not really thinking about it, they're just being overzealous, whatever.
No, I agree with you.
By now you guys realize, okay, you know what, like let's look at some of this layer 2, because like you cannot scale like that. You just can't. If you really want it to be used, man, you can't just think it's all right. Businesses will run, $500,000 nodes and no big deal. Somebody will do it. Like you don't have to think that way. You can just be like, oh, we'll just use layer 2.
Well, no, like, and if you look, that's what I'm coming to. The layer 1 and the layer 2 stuff are definitely not mutually exclusive. I'm definitely not against layer 2's research in any regard of that. I think
argument. You say, hey, we have bigger blocks and layer 2, so we're better. You know what I mean? Like,
yes, that's the idea. I mean, yeah, that's right. There's no reason that you have to be religious about one side or the other. In fact, that was also like why I went to OpNext this year in April, and that was where a lot of people were talking about all this layer 2 stuff. The reason you don't see it in BCH is for 2 reasons. One is because our layer 1 traffic is already too low, so like we've got plenty of space there that we would need to fill up before there was sort of a strong incentive to actually investigate the layer 2 stuff a little more strongly. And the second is just because we're so small. Again, it's literally just a lack of resources. And in fact, we've spent a lot of time trying to talk to people who are interested in layer 2s on BTC to say, all this stuff, all these opcodes you want to activate, all this stuff, it's already enabled on BCH. If you want, just make a proof of concept, and then you'll be able to actually show people that your stuff works. Maybe it will help you to advocate
if you guys ran
for the upgrade.
Because it would be such a kick in your ass after all the Lightning hate you've done. Just run Lightning since the code's out there. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, it would be, like I'm not against that. It's just, as the amount of infrastructure that needs to go into getting that all set up and, maintaining it, right? Updating it, building support into the wallets, reaching out, doing community support.
Scaling,
Yeah,
but
I'm
it's
sure.
scaling also because of the same reason why a layer one crazy solution would scale. LSPs, they're called LSPs, Lightning Service Providers.
Yes.
So because people don't want to, for whatever reason, it's just common sense, people don't want to do
Lock up all their cash into it. Yeah.
they don't want to run their own servers, payment servers that they have to set up and all these things. And then, your money's essentially on that server. So it's kind of like a hot wallet. There's obviously, like, if you know network security, there's ways of doing that very secure, but like, everybody's going to have to basically be in charge of their own cybersecurity, and that's scary if you got a big node. So for a lot of reasons, it makes sense just to use an LSP. But LSPs are a really good model because they're still compatible with Bitcoin ethos. They're still very trust minimized. Your LSP can't rug you in general. They're usually facilitating your payments through either, and there's a lot of really cool ways coming out of doing this, and some of them haven't deployed yet. I work with a lot of startups, and my main job is I'm a consultant. So a lot of startups come to me either for help raising money, or because they're investors will come to me because they want me to look at the tech of some startup they want to invest in, and then give them like the lowdown. And I've seen some really cool ones, like I think it's Lexi. Let's see. Lexi, if I'm not mistaken. I'll check my email actually.
While you're checking that, just one thing as well I wanted to throw in there for the listeners. We don't need to go into this in detail, but you mentioned signature verification earlier, and we had a talk at Bliss where Peter Risen was talking about his ultra mega optimized chips for signature verification. So that is also something that the listeners can chase up, where I can't remember the exact numbers now, but basically it was just like mind-blowing efficiency in terms of his chips that he thought would become standardized to do signature verification.
Cool.
So that wasn't going to be a bottleneck.
That is cool. That's something that definitely would be needed, like some kind of like essentially like more specialized signing device for that kind of scale would be a piece of the puzzle. Still don't think it'd be worth trouble, but it's definitely a good piece of the puzzle.
You don't even. I remember in his talk he said you didn't even need an ASIC. You could do like a FGPA.
FPGA.
Yeah.
They're basically like programmable, like a custom ASIC that you can program.
Yeah, and then I always imagined it like one of those Google Coral Tensor units where it's just a USB thing you plug in and you're good to go. Like,
I don't know if it run on USB, but
well, yeah, I'm sure USB would then be the bottleneck, right?
Well, I don't know. I meant my mind. Sorry, I misunderstood you because I meant like they got those USB miners, the entire miners in the USB.
Oh, what? I did not know.
They're not very strong, but whatever chip it is, I've my own fault. I imagine you thinking that it would just be in the USB chip, but you meant using USB as an interface to it. Yeah. That's more feasible. There's a lot of data. The USB's data is like 40 gigabyte per second now. It's a lot. Actually, it's almost enough for Bitcoin Cash. The blocks that you imagine.
There you go.
But still not
and
yet.
we got 20 years to spare. We're not looking too bad.
That's a good observation here. The USB interface, the very fastest ones, are still not fast enough for what you think the blockchain is going to do. So that's something to think about, because they're very fast, but not that fast. Well, I guess technically, because they would be per 10 minutes and these are per second. So yes, it could, but
maybe per minute eventually.
So I'm looking at this.
In any case.
Looking at this Lexi Lightning wallet, and what they are doing is very original. I'm not trying to shill them or anything. There's somebody that I got to speak with, and it's interesting here. They are running a almost like a trustless cloud instance for you. So you are running your, they're basically handling your infrastructure, your digital infrastructure for the node, but they're able to manage it all while you still have full control over any keys. So you can still have all your own keys securely running on a secure hardware element, whatever you use for your key security, while they run all the infrastructure. Blockstream does something similar with, what was it called? Blockstream has a solution that does, I forget the name of it now, but they have one similarly where they'll run your hardware in the cloud, you'll keep charge of your keys. And this does two good things. One, the biggest problem with running a Lightning service provider, if you're going to custody people's money, if you want to run somebody's infrastructure, you don't want to have their money on it, because now you don't want to get into being a money transmitter. So, and you also just don't want to have the security risk of you getting hacked causes somebody else to lose money. So this allows you to run the infrastructure, which is the hard part, but let the customer or the client have the keys. And so you can run, you can have a very sophisticated infrastructure setup similar to AWS, where you'd be running thousands or hundreds of thousands of Lightning nodes all on your one setup, where all those clients are completely in control of their own keys, and these instances can spin up or spin down as needed, and they can even scale as needed. So you'd have the keys, you'd be totally trustless, and you're just relying on these guys for infrastructure. It's a really elegant solution for not having to trust, because the issue should always be trust. It shouldn't just be like some ideological desire not to let anybody help you, run your software or hardware. It's only relevant to me that I'm using a third party if that third party can take my money.
Yes.
If they can't take my money and they're just helping me run infrastructure, that to me is totally within the Bitcoin ethos. Because it's about trust. It's about not having to trust third parties, not about not having to potentially use a third party to help you so you don't have to run a server. If we could somehow trustlessly allow other people to have Bitcoin keys on our behalf, that would be a good thing, but we can't. It's impossible to say, hey, make my keys for me and don't tell me what they are, but also you're not allowed to see them. Like that would be obviously on its face impossible. If they somehow are making your keys and storing your keys and you don't even have the key, like obviously they're the ones that physically could see and use your key. So it's like, because the best way to scale the UTXO set, one of the first ideals you'll have naively as a beginner trying to think about how do you scale, because the problem with Lightning, as Roger and you guys probably point out to everyone who argues with you, is that you can only onboard 3 to 5 channels per second. Maybe it's you're not going to get the world like weighing on a Lightning network and then all of a sudden be able to open all these channels. It won't work. You'll bog down layer 1. It's too slow. Another argument for why Lightning on Bitcoin Cash, you have a whole talking point about how much better it was.
Yeah.
Great, but you guys don't want to do that.
Exactly. No, what do you mean we don't want to do that? You're on this show. Of course we want to do that.
Everybody talks about how shitty Lightning is and how centralized it is, whatever, how it doesn't work. But
but that's you got to give us some credit here. Like we will, and it's in my FAQ. If you go and read about it, I say Lightning Network has these problems, like you say, the constrained throughput on layer 1, but the payment technology is fantastic. The only reason that, and it would work better on BCH, of course. The only problem with Lightning Network, insofar as it itself, was that it was used as an excuse to override the discussion of why don't we just do both, which if you go back and watch the old Roger debate, he says that over and over and over again. He says Lightning Network is great, maybe you guys are right, like I'm happy to let you do that. Why don't we just have that and big blocks? And I think the BCH community still is like that. The only reason to dunk on Lightning is because it's kind of like, when are you guys going to come back to the table and like talk about this, that maybe we got some things right there, that's why, but it's not mutually exclusive. And
of course, because Lightning does, other than the layer 1 problems we're discussing now, Lightning does allow for unlimited transactions to happen. So if you and I had our own Lightning node and we wanted to transact with one another, it's actually the problem it solves is global state. Global state, trying to know what everybody's doing at all times, where all the Bitcoin are at all times. Every single computer on the network has to globally track that. That is the problem with layer 1 scaling. So with Lightning, there is no global state. You and I can send each other 1 million transactions a second if our hardware was capable of it, and then implementation was capable of it. That
would be the hardware that would be used to run big blocks, running millions of transactions per second.
But it would only be me and you that would need it. Rather than everyone recording our transactions all around the world. You and I. But
you and me and our home nodes, right? That we spin up for $50.
Hypothetically, if we had computers fast enough and network fast enough to do this, we could do it, and it wouldn't. And everybody else running Lightning Network wouldn't even have to see it. They wouldn't even know that we're sitting here doing millions of transactions with each other because we're doing it peer to peer, truly peer to peer.
As long as we could afford a layer 1 transaction, right?
One of them, yes. So we would just need to afford one layer 1 transaction.
Well, one in case you tried to fraud me, and I need to settle in a hurry.
But that's a lot less than the millions we'd be doing. It's a bigger, it's a big difference to say that people can't afford it.
Well, how often are you and I going to need to make millions of transactions just between you and me?
Hypothetical that we could do unlimited transactions if we wanted after we paid that one, plus we have one in the kitty.
But that's potentially in an oil tanker future, right? That's the problem, is when it gets to it's going to be as rare as chartering an oil tanker, and then so not that every business is going to have $100,000 to run a node, but every 2 guys on the street are going to have $100,000 to charter a Lightning channel between themselves.
Because the LSP models we're talking about, where LSPs can run, and the great thing about the LSP infrastructure too that Lexi has and Blockstream, they're doing it in different ways, but similar outcomes. The great thing about their model is they don't have to sit there and run your instance 24/7. Let's say like they have 10,000 clients. They don't have to have like AWS with 10,000 nodes just sitting there and running all the time. They can use the same single node as a backend, and then they can turn on and off, like in real time, the Lightning layers on these nodes as needed. So it can scale, like they're not running 1,000, 10,000 instances at once. When the traffic's coming in, they can activate those. They can send the key signing operations to the client or to their trusted environments. And then, it's just a very clever way of like scaling the infrastructure without relinquishing your trust as a client. So the infrastructure piece can be settled in a lot of ways, or you can just run it yourself, of course. But for like businesses and stuff, these LSPs are getting really smart. But now the layer one problem is a problem, and here is my answer there. Because as I was getting at, if we could just say, hey, I'm gonna make a private key, and somehow I'm gonna like secretly make like private keys underneath that to share with you guys, and then you guys can use those. Obviously, it wouldn't work because I would have everybody's private key that I generated. And there's no trustless way that we know of for me to be able to make keys on your behalf that I can't figure out. So somehow. So that's always been the problem. How do you scale the UTXO set? How do you get more people their own keys into the same UTXO or less UTXOs? And I don't know if you've been following ARC.
A little bit. I have been following it. I saw the talk at Op Next, and I love that. We haven't hit on a good meme for it yet, but come on. You need the Lightning Network to fix your broken layer 1, but then you need ARC to fix your broken layer 2.
They're not broken. There are downsides. So the downside of Lightning is that you can't onboard unlimited. You can do unlimited transactions, but you can't onboard unlimited. The downside of ARC is you can't do unlimited transactions. But the upside of ARC is you can onboard unlimited people into the Bitcoin UTXO set. So you use ARC and Lightning together.
Well, not into the UTXO set. You're just in your off-chain, transactions or whatever that you're working. They are not, but they are not holding their own UTXOs at the end of the day.
They're holding their own UTXO, but they are holding their own key. So as long as you're able to trustlessly hold your own key, you don't necessarily need to be holding your own UTXO. Problem is, we hadn't been able up until now to find a way where you could hold a key in somebody else's UTXO without them being able to rug you. And now with ARC, essentially what we've done is created a series of fallbacks where, and this is the disadvantage of ARC, every time you transact on the ARC network, it's creating virtual UTXOs that you hold the keys for. And every time you transact on that network, the ARC service provider, or the ASP, like an LSP, but an ASP, the ARC service provider then has to keep a copy of that virtual UTXO able to be spent at all times for whatever the timeout is, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever the implementation says. The implementations haven't nailed that down yet, but currently it's like either 2 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever. And they basically have to lock up the UTXO for every UTXO, virtual UTXO that happens, which means that every time people spend, they have to keep a redundant individual virtual transaction of that. So like if I send you 1 million sats, all right, and then you send Jay 1 million sats, all right, that VSP now has to hold, I think, 3 million sats because he's got, 2, because he's got my VTXO to you. So it's got, okay, here's my VTXO to you. And if that one's going to be stored forever with Bitcoin backing it the whole time, then you're going to send 1 million to him. That's got a separate UTXO. It also has to store separately. So the liquidity doesn't scale very well, because if we're all just sending millions of sats around, that service provider has to keep a record backed by Bitcoin of every transaction redundantly. So if we're doing $1 billion worth of volume, it has to store $1 billion worth of Bitcoin, even though it may only have, $100 million worth of Bitcoin or $10 million worth of Bitcoin. If we send it back and forth enough, he has to store all that Bitcoin every time we send it back and forth. Another 1 Bitcoin every time we send 1 Bitcoin. He has to have another 1 Bitcoin to back that. So that's the disadvantage.
So this is now getting super inefficient, like you were talking about the inefficiency of the blockchain at the L1, except now you've constructed 2 more layers of complicated, convoluted technology to reinvent the same problem.
Because it doesn't write it on chain. So it solves that problem because it's essentially writing it all into 1 UTXO, and then it's updating that UTXO even before it gets confirmed into blocks. So When it finally gets confirmed, it's kind of settling its state. But up until it's confirmed, it's updating that one UTXO over and over again to show what the state is.
And then who pays all the money to settle the one on-chain
server
hypothetical fee?
The Arc server is doing that, and this is where it can get even more cool. If you can follow the second, third order effects with me here, this is something I actually brought up to the Arc developers. There's no like one set of Arc developers, but I've brought it up to various ones. One of the things that I've been pretty excited about, because before I got into Bitcoin, I worked in Ethereum stuff and DeFi stuff, whatever, like 2017 times. And so I'm very familiar with like how DeFi works and how those systems operate, especially like loaning, lending. I've worked for Aave and other like lending, borrowing schemes. And one of the cool things about this is because you have to only hold this Bitcoin for like 2 to 4 weeks, whatever it is. If you look at the on-chain yield for Bitcoin for lending and borrowing and DeFi, it's very low usually. There's a lot of people, if they were sure it was safe, if they were somehow, that's the big if, but if they were sure it was safe, there's a lot of people that would put their Bitcoin with you, even for like a 1% yield, because they're holding their Bitcoin anyway. If they can make a free, safe, keyword safe, 1% on it, then they would do that. Like they wouldn't put it into somebody's bank for 1% because it's not safe there. It might get rugged, whatever. But if they were sure it was cryptographically secure, and you could make a free 1% on it, I think there's billions of dollars of the Bitcoin that would happily just sit there and pull 1%, or less even.
So now it's hang on. So now it's Ethereum. You are the yield. Is that what we're getting?
What we're saying is, so the reason why DeFi doesn't work usually, and by DeFi I mean like all of these yield schemes, like the yield farming stuff that even smart BCH has tried to imitate in the past and failed for centralization reasons. The problem with these schemes is usually in crypto world, DeFi is yield generated by more token speculation. That's not sustainable. It's like, hey, if people keep buying these tokens, then you will keep paying a yield in these tokens, and then that artificial money that was created out of thin air will be your reward. That's not sustainable because there's no actual money being generated. It's just people speculating against each other and like eating each other alive. But what I call like real DeFi or real yield is like Aave is actually a better example of real yield. Because Aave is not coming from token appreciation when you're in a lending and borrowing pool. It's coming from the market value of somebody who actually wants to lend or borrow. So there are real borrowers and real lenders, and they really are willing to pay a fee to borrow. Like they're getting some value from the transaction of being able to borrow money from you, and so they're willing to pay real money, actual money, not printed out with an air money. Not
hypothetical.
They're willing to spend some real Bitcoin or whatever as a cost of being able to lend and borrow that money. And that to me, I call that like, real DeFi, or at least more sustainable DeFi, because the yield comes from actual market activity that is it's a real product here. It's like lending and borrowing is a real product, unlike token speculation. And so Arc.
No, that's good. That's good. I just maybe we can finish off this Arc topic because we're going to run out of time. Otherwise, I do want to get into this not stuff while we have you here. But I mean, maybe we could even do another episode where we go into all the details of these extreme, layers on BTC. But the point is that basically anything you guys invent that is absolutely amazing and shows product market fit, we will copy as and when we have the need because we have a more powerful layer 1 protocol, right? So,
well, sure. But if you guys for example, if you just like Litecoin is a copy of Bitcoin. When you already have like the best coin that everybody uses, the real value of Bitcoin isn't the tech. So the problem that a lot of people don't see. Tech isn't really it. Like a lot of people, especially Ethereum type people, they think it's about tech because it's not about tech. If it were about tech, it'd be very sad. I mean, I always compare investing in Ethereum, like the token. It's like investing in Apple smartwatches, not investing in Apple company, investing in Apple smartwatches. You're investing in the technology because Apple, the company, the equity would be the quote unquote store of value. The smartwatch is the tech. So if you said, okay, like here's a Rolex and here's an Apple smartwatch, the Apple smartwatch can do so many more things. It's better. It's can do your calendar. You can text on it. The Rolex can't do anything, right? It's just a hunk of dumb rock, whatever you want to call it. I mean, it's got some cool engineering, but it's totally nothing compared to a smartwatch. So if you use that tech logic and you put a bunch of Apple watches, which are superior technically, into a vault, like within 3 years, you've got like no value in that. Nobody wants an old Apple Watch. Like, it's almost worthless.
Yes.
And
So it's not just down to technology. I mean, firstly, BCH has the same monetary properties as BTC. It has just as long of a history. It has less hash rate, although that is a consequence of having the lower price. But otherwise, if in a hypothetical, so my model for this, right, is that for BCH to attract investment, liquidity, and users away from BTC, it has to be at least 10x better than BTC, right? In the same way that BTC is 10 to a million times better than fiat. That's what you need to be a competitive alternative and to justify switching costs, right? So if BCH can be 10 or 100x technologically better than BTC, it will start attracting liquidity and hash rate. And then once that becomes equivalent between the two, that's no longer like monetary properties is no longer an argument against it in the same way that it would be against ETH.
I also, of course, I think the fundamentals of Bitcoin are better than Bitcoin Cash because small. So if you want higher fees, and this has been shown. I mean, the Bitcoin Cash argument has always been that, if you can do more transactions, then ultimately you can get higher fees because, you times your fees times a million, whatever, it's going to be a big number.
Yes.
But in reality, and what we've seen across many chains, pretty much every chain, not just Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, and BSV, but if you count Solana and Ethereum, and any chain that tries to do a high TPS, their fees are always extremely low because if you want, and the chains which have lower TPS always have the not only higher fees per transaction, but higher revenue for whether it's a validator or a miner or whatever you want to call them. So it's pretty much, to me, I'm convinced that smaller blocks or more scarce block space is what you want if you're caring about like the overall revenue for validators. Now, if you want cheaper fees for the users, fine. Bigger blocks, less scarce space is better for users. But for the infrastructure running the network, I think that smaller blocks are superior. They create larger fees and also less cost because you don't have to have these, hypothetical petabytes worth of space that you're going to have to maintain. So, also,
but smaller blocks don't create demand. That's a real thing that a lot of people get really confused about. People think BTC has high demand and it has small blocks. Right. No, therefore, the small blocks created the demand. No, that's not true.
You're
Actually,
right.
It was the network effect and the innovative properties that drew in a lot of people. And then ETH is also the same, right?
I think
ETH has a lot of demand.
You have to bring your own demand, or people have to want to use it. That's why people don't use crypto for payments right now, Bitcoin or any other. I mean, they do. I mean, a lot of people use Bitcoin for payments, but I mean, like at large in the world, there aren't there isn't like this huge demand for like from my sister or family members, unless you've orange pilled everybody, to go to their local Kroger or Publix and use, I don't know what country you're in, Australia, whatever. Maybe you don't have these stores, grocery store, and spend Bitcoin. And the reason why is because it's not like because the wallet's too hard or whatever. It's because they don't need to. Why, if I can just go and I can tap my card and it's already in my bank account and all my money that I use is in my bank account and I'm paid to that bank account, why in the world would I say, you know what, instead, let me find some guy that's going to charge me 1 or 2%, get some Bitcoin, run this other wallet, and then use that? Like, it's just not, there's no need to do that. So their demand is not there. If there was a desire to do that, they would do it. But there isn't. And until there is, they won't. And you cannot create that demand by making wallets easier or by like telling them they should, or like.
Well, you kind of can. If the wallets are easy enough, then it helps
but it's not
create
like,
that demand. Yes.
To me, and this is where I get into the store of value before medium exchange argument. The reason why I have a desire to use Bitcoin as a payment technology, because I do. I use Bitcoin as payment all the time. I use Lightning. I use on-chain. I shop with Bitcoin all the time because it's where I keep my money, Bitcoin, not dollars. The reason why I have a desire to spend Bitcoin is because I have accumulated Bitcoin. And so because of the store of value and me using it as a store of value, at first I didn't spend it. Eventually I was like, man, I've got more Bitcoin than I've got dollars. I sure would like to be able to spend that Bitcoin. I mean, it's my money now. And it just naturally follows that if you've got your money in one currency rather than another, you will naturally want to spend it in the currency that your money is in. And so I think that the trajectory of normal humanity will follow the same path. They will, for whatever reason, have Bitcoin, save in Bitcoin, see their Bitcoin value grow, and then they'll have a real reason to organically want to spend Bitcoin, because now it's like they didn't. It's not just like, oh, well, you can send it so fast. Like, yeah, my Visa is super fast. Like, we're not solving any problems for anybody unless, of course, they tried to. Now, here's another way. Of course, if they try to start censoring what we can buy, then I believe that black markets would form that use. I mean, we already do. That's why drug markets exist, etc. The reason why crypto is so popular in those black markets is because there's a need. There's a need there. That's probably why those homeless-looking people are behind Bitcoin at the ATM, because there's a need for drugs that you can't buy at the grocery store. But there is no need for most people. And
yes,
and that'll come eventually as either black markets are more common, because maybe they start trying to ban carbon goods or whatever, or because enforce bug eating quotas, whatever the case may be. So either demand comes from government trying to control our spending behaviors more to an extent that people want to avoid that, or it comes from the fact that just people have enough Bitcoin now that they value that as their currency rather than the dollars, and they want to spend directly.
Yes.
But
hang on. So do we agree, or do you agree with me that if they were at equivalent hash rate and, let's say, general network effect in terms of number of adopted people and like brand recognition, that BCH would be as good monetarily as BTC if those two things were true?
No, because it would come down then to the decentralization, and ultimately the decentralization means how hard is it to change or stop.
Right.
The only really relevant thing about, we wouldn't need decentralization if you could make something centralized that couldn't be changed or stopped. Like if we had a magical rock that was born out of the earth, and this rock wanted to act as the Bitcoin ledger, and it had global Wi-Fi on it, and nobody could manipulate it, and it would just store a perfect ledger inside. It would be totally centralized, hypothetically indestructible. Okay, we would be fine, because it'd be this centralized rock that would act as a ledger that nobody could manipulate, change, or stop, and so it would do the job. But in real life, there's no such thing as a centralized thing that can't be changed or stopped. Because if it's centralized, you can change the code or just turn it off or blow it up.
Isn't that the BSV argument? Oh, we want it set in stone.
No, but although that's a nice parallel, no. I'm not talking about ossification here. I'm talking about the ability to. So right now on BCH,
hold on. We were just talking about the fundamentals, right? And I think Jeremy, still
fundamental
everything you said about store value is what I'm doing with BCH. So,
but it can be changed. So, for example,
well, how would that work? Can you explain to me how it would be harder to, for instance, breaking the 21 million cap is really the big problem that we're talking about here, right?
Mm-hmm, and we're going to get into knots with this discussion, because ultimately,
yes,
there's no technical reason. So if you talk to an Ethereum developer, one of these smart guys, they have a lot of smart developers. I mean, some of some of the best coders have gravitated towards these things because it pays them a lot of money, and these are smart guys. That doesn't mean they understand money or what they're actually doing, or even why Bitcoin is valuable, but they know code. They might know how cryptography works, depending on what they do. They can be very smart ivory tower type people. And if you talk to one of these ivory tower type Ethereum people, and you give them the argument that Bitcoin is fundamentally more decentralized than Ethereum, and he says, why? So because Bitcoin has this maximum supply, 21 million can't be changed, and Ethereum doesn't. It's unlimited, and also it's so centralized that if they wanted to change it, they could, and they do change it all the time. They just recently added, they changed the whole monetary properties of it when they went to
Ethereum 2.0. They do it all the
time. You can't trust that it's going to be the same. But what the Ethereum guy would tell you is, well, technically, there's no difference between Bitcoin and Ethereum. They can both be changed the same way. And they're trying to make, in my opinion, a bad faith argument that says they're both just as easy to change, because technically they have the same levers to change it. But we all know, with any common sense, ignore that tech, we all know you're not going to convince the Bitcoin network to increase the supply or change the monetary supply or the monetary operation of the network. You're not going to change the rules of Bitcoin in such a fundamental way as they do on Ethereum all the time. But it's not a technical reason. It's a cultural one. That is purely down to the culture of the users of the network is why that happens. And that comes down to the decentralization. And that is the aspect that I would say Bitcoin Cash is weaker on than Bitcoin. I would say it would be easier to change. We can't really quantify it, but I would say it would be easier to change supply on Bitcoin Cash than it would be on Bitcoin. Bitcoin is more decentralized or hard.
But what could that, like you say, it's hard to quantify, right? But if they had an equal,
it's not
price, let's say,
it's not hash protected. I think the hash rate.
Okay, hang on. Okay, so it's partly like hash rate is maybe one element of it. The node count is probably one element of it. The number of invested interests is probably one element of it, right?
Mhm.
So maybe there's more to the community's culture is one
Mhm.
element of it.
And
If
that-
all of those things were equal, this is just what I'm trying to get to you.
Okay,
if
no,
we
if they're
zero
all
out
equal,
all
yeah.
those things. Okay, so
Because-
we agree if that was all equal, BCH would be just as sound money as BTC, right?
But I think
So hang on. Let me take one step more. Given that BCH is currently less like that than BTC, if there is evidence that BCH is growing and getting closer to BTC on those metrics over time, what would convince you that that process is not going to continue?
Well, they share the same Genesis block, but the fundamental rules of Bitcoin, and we talked about this briefly before, it's not the technology that determines what Bitcoin
Yes.
is, it's the ledger. Bitcoin Cash
agree.
has separated the ledger. It's become a separate
Yes.
thing. It's no longer, the Bitcoin ledger. And so for that reason, it could not become Bitcoin by definition. It's something
Well,
else.
it couldn't become BTC. It can.
Right.
It's still Bitcoin.
So ultimately the thing that is valuable, if we get down to it and we skip everything else, is so even if, let's say, quantum computing or some other thing happened where for some reason the Bitcoin network was technologically no longer feasible, it just totally imploded or whatever. As long as people still had, now quantum would be a question mark here, but as long as people still had proof of their ownership, the community would, and this is obviously like worst case scenario, whatever, but the community would gravitate towards another solution that maintained the same ownership scheme. So it wouldn't be the tech that they would want to preserve, but the ownership of their UTXOs they would want to preserve. And it's ultimately that UTXO ownership that.
Yeah, so it's the value invested in the UTXOs is what you're saying. But I've said to you, let's say if we zoom out, like let's say price is approximating the hash rate, the community's belief in the 21 million, the market's recognition of its solidity, etc.
We'll just say it's all the same, right? We're just going to say it's all.
Well,
the
I'm just saying that if BCH starts rising against BTC,
I think that
and it flips it would be more monetarily sound, right?
Many reasons to expect that won't happen, and it's because it's a very.
Hang on, so let's get to that, but we can get to that. But first, so that's you agree, right? That if
that happened,
if it happened, then it happened. So if
somehow, but see, there's fundamental problems with Ethereum. Even if we
so we're not talking about Ethereum. Stop bringing up Ethereum. I'm talking about BCH.
It's easier to demonstrate because
if you were in our position, let me put it to you this way. So we agree that if BCH can rise against BTC on the market, it must approximate all those other characteristics, and that if it could get to that point and it's surpass it, it would be superior. So now let me ask you.
It'd be easier. Like if we had 70 gigabyte blocks, for example, it's a lot easier to find a guy doing 70 gigabytes worth of traffic than it is to find a guy doing floppy disk amounts of traffic. It's fundamentally weaker in the censorship resistance.
Yes. So if you were in my position, believing for whatever reason that BCH was superior to BTC, how would you attack the problem of getting extra network effect and security and node running and all that stuff onto BCH?
I would have to make it have smaller blocks.
But like, why would that be? So okay, if BCH set the blocks to 100 kilobyte, would we suddenly start winning? How would that work?
Yeah, well, it would be at this point. Put it this way, because you've already forked and we're not going to have people deciding to come back to a fork. But if you made a new fork, it was 300 kilobyte blocks or whatever, and called that Bitcoin Cash, I think that would be at least.
That's nonsense. That would never fly. That's
it doesn't.
That's going to happen when Luke forks with knots, but it's not going to work. Nobody, because
I think it would be
that
more
would lose all.
At least it would be something that me personally, and I think a lot of people that I know, not that we don't want to fork, but
that's right.
It would at least be.
So what could I do to convince you? Besides lowering the block size, okay, that's not it.
Because the block size makes it fundamentally worse in a lot of material ways, and then that can't.
No, but that's what I'm saying. A lot of people in the world don't agree with that, though. You believe that, but a lot of people, if you're in my position, trying to convince, well, no, I don't think it's the majority. Like BTC is, the known small block kind of chain, right? And that is falling in dominance over time. In fact, and there's this cope that you can print an infinite amount of shitcoins, but you can't print an infinite amount of shitcoins that have value, right? The market value is slowly shifting
Market cap is
to
not
a more pluralist way.
Like $1 billion of market cap on Ethereum is not the same as $1 billion of market cap on Bitcoin, especially like $1 billion market cap on like Tron is way weaker than the equivalent $1 billion of the market cap on Bitcoin because
I mean, $1 billion is $1 billion.
No, because market cap isn't $1 billion. Like, for example, if you and I did make 300 kilobyte fork of Bitcoin today, and we just made it ourselves. We didn't give it to anybody else yet. And we, made a little exchange that's only me and you. And we put our new fork on there at $1 per Bitcoin. All right. We just created $21 million market cap, but we don't actually have 20 million.
Obviously you can okay, it's true, you can fugazi market cap,
but I mean it is fugazi. It's that just at a bigger scale. It's not like there's $1 million backing every $1 million of market cap. It's whatever that function ends up expounding. I mean, there's even like dead chains that are still worth hundreds of millions of dollars, but you couldn't even buy 10 grand on there. Like just the number of coins times the price, and it's not really fair to compare. Bitcoin dominance charts, I think, are nonsense for that reason. I've got billions of dollars of market cap that's not even.
Well, the industry. Okay, let's put it. I'm just using that as a rough proxy. Like the industry is moving away from BTC over time on the scale of 10 years from 2015 when Bitcoin was everything to now when there's a thriving industry of shitcoiner conferences, meetup groups, telegrams,
I would highly disagree,
etc.
I still don't see any shitcoin. I've seen, and I'm in North Carolina, I've seen shitcoin meetups pop up here and there, and they never last more than like 3-4 months. They can never grow because they always get wrecked, and they always just lose hope and they leave. Like I've never seen but then on the other hand, every city I go to, I can find a Bitcoin meetup nearby. Like they're old and they've been around for a while, and it's like it's a sustainable thing. Shitcoins are just flashes in the pan. They cannot sustain communities. And what I've seen is Bitcoin adoption growing incredibly fast all around me. Like it's nuts being somebody like me that started out when nobody even knew what Bitcoin was, and now if I go to the local bar, whatever, I'm going to be able to talk about most people about what Bitcoin is now. None of them know what Bitcoin Cash is. Probably not.
No, actually, that's. I would say it's the other way around. Like, I agree with you. Most people now know what Bitcoin is, but most people now know what Ethereum is too. 5 years ago, a lot of people knew about Bitcoin. They didn't know about Ethereum. Now they know about Solana. They know about Ripple. Like the bar has just moved up.
That's true. They spend the most on marketing, but
that's right. So, but that's the point. The bar has moved from nobody knows about cryptocurrencies at all.
It's always
some people know about Bitcoin. To some people know about ETH. To some people know about cryptocurrencies in general. Like people are used to the idea that there are competing cryptocurrencies.
Well, once a serious person, actually investigates what each thing is, they immediately, hopefully, dismiss XRP because it's nonsense.
Yes.
They might get a lot of the technical minded people might get tricked by Ethereum because they don't understand how money works and they don't understand that investing in Apple Watches isn't a good idea. But ultimately, I think that that in fact, objectively, Bitcoin has the best fundamentals and the best value proposition, and so it is the one that people are organically starting to understand the value of running their own hardware and why that's important. And it's like there's a real objectively honest reason for this. It's not just like, oh, I heard the name and so that's the one I'm going to default to. It's not really a popularity contest at the end of the day because everybody's talking
money is a popularity contest. Actually,
it matters fundamentally what the money is. There have been many monies throughout history which while they were the dominant currency still failed because of the fundamentals of the thing. Whether they hyperinflation,
it's a popularity contest, asterisks. Like if I have the money if I have the less sound money today, but everyone uses it for the next 100 years, which is my lifespan, and I die, I don't care if this small thing, so there's a temporal element to it.
You shouldn't bet on that.
Yes.
You can see that coming.
I agree. Yes. Okay, hang on. We're literally only got 20 minutes left. We got to talk about knots. Let's just get it. Do you want to talk about these DDoS attacks?
Let's. You got some stuff. Let's watch.
Yeah. Let's. I'm sure you've seen this clip, but for everybody here, there was this clip that went around. I don't know, the last week of Portland Hoddle recorded talking about his hypothetical undermining of Knots nodes. Let's have a quick listen to this.
Their bills are going to be so expensive this month.
We have a list of basically Knots nodes to advertise on Knots, and then the
the users of Comcast have data caps at their house typically, and these are residential ASNs. They're not like the Comcast business blocks. And so, yeah, like I was, okay, I am like basically peering with them and asking for an IBD from a fresh node. Maybe I have like 96 of these nodes running right now because I want to get IBDs from all these clients. And sometimes
are they at least NOTs nodes?
No, they're core nodes.
Come on.
They're actually master branch. But continuing on, essentially just like asking again and again and again, allegedly. So mechanic comes up in the space. At this point, I know it's kind of probably recorded, etc. So I was like, confirm or like he's like, do you formally confirm or deny that you're doing this? I was like, I kind of pussied out and I was like, no, I'm not gonna deal with this right now. And I said, well, check your node. And I'm still not gonna like deal with that. But definitely it could be happening.
So basically, he's using the initial block download to just spam requests to NOTs nodes over and over, asking them to send him loads of traffic until they run out their internet meter, which, of course, is ironically very similar to a lot of the shenanigans that was going on during the block size war. What was your reaction to this? And tell me about this.
Yeah, I was disgusted by it. And coming from kind of a hacking background that I'm from, I was actually a little scared of this because there's this one of the responses that NVK, the creator of the cold card, and I've always respected him because I've always really appreciated the cold card, but this really made me lose respect for him. I don't think I'll buy another cold type product again after this because he said, this is great. We need more of this. We need more people like showing the attack surface of Bitcoin. But here's why I disagree. Because this wasn't like revealing some exploit that helps the network and teaching people a lesson. This kind of attack can always be done. What he did, no matter how much you lock down the network, it can be done on Bitcoin Cash, it can be done on basically any blockchain. What he did was because he works for, I don't know if you know who he is. This guy Portman.
Yeah, I've met him very briefly at OpNext. I know he works for Mara and all that.
He works for Mara. He's the one that created Slipstream, which is the way that people are getting most of the shitcoins on Bitcoin right now, directly through the miners, or through his miner. It's the largest publicly traded mining company in the world. And so he has a lot of resources. He's not just some peasant. He's got access to hundreds of, AWS Bitcoin nodes, and he knows how to use them. He's a very technical Bitcoin guy. So he said, hey, I noticed that some of because they were probably, if I had to guess, and this part of speculation, but they were probably looking at the IP addresses of NOTs nodes because they want to try to downplay the adoption of the NOTs nodes. Because anybody can run 1,000 nodes on cloud and say, hey, look, 1,000 people are already NOTs or whatever. So they're probably trying to look at that. One of the ways you can tell when people are faking adoption is if you see everything's on the cloud. If you see like 2,000 new AWS Bitcoin nodes pop up, it's probably one guy. So they were looking, I'm assuming here, but they found instead a whole bunch of residential nodes, which means it is real people. And then he says, oh, well, if it's real people, I wonder what ISP they're on. And he looks, oh, they're on Comcast. Comcast has data limits. And if they go over their data limit, then it'll cost them hundreds of dollars. So I wonder what's the best way I can send each one of these normal residential users at their house. Maybe they're even kids. Wonder what's the best way I could send them a bunch of data so I could jack up their internet bill. All right. And maybe knock their whole household off the internet. Maybe it's some, 13-year-old kid who's getting into Bitcoin and he runs his NOTs node. And now his family's got to pay like an extra $300 or whatever every month. So he says, okay, well, IBD is the best way. So he spins up 100 nodes on Core, 100 of them in the cloud, and spams as fast as he can IBD requests to each one of these residential Comcast users in an attempt to cost them hundreds of dollars on their bill or to get them to turn it offline if they can't afford it. Now, this is not the normal kind of like, let's see if your node has any like weaknesses. This is like, it's one thing to like, if we found like a ping of death, there used to be, if you remember, the ping of death back on iPhones back in the day, or no, actually it was for Macintosh computers. If you sent this one packet of information to a Mac IP, it would knock the computer offline. That was obviously an exploit in the Mac OS and needed to be fixed and obviously disclosed. This is not like that. This is not an error with the node software. This is just like, let me spin up 100 computers because I'm some rich technical guy and spam everybody to death with data knocking their infrastructure offline. That has nothing to do with Bitcoin. You could do that with any blockchain, with any service. The only way to prevent that would be just never let your Bitcoin node share anything with anyone, which is obviously a sad state
or have to manually sort of coordinate offline out of band with your peers and stuff like that, right?
So like but it's luckily not a realistic issue because there's no incentive to do that. You don't win any money for doing that. You're not really gonna, like, the Bitcoin network's gonna be fine doing that because a lot of people have limited bandwidth, whatever. I mean, if you had enough computers, you could totally DDoS everyone hypothetically, but it would be expensive at that point. And there's no, like, we would coordinate or something in that case. It would suck, but like, it's not like a bug that does this. It's just one guy with a bunch of money that's able to spam people without a bunch of money. And that's always going to be, it's always going to be possible to harass people with less resources than you in the world. You know, there's a lot of ways. And this to me is in the same vein as, like, I find your IP address. I find out what ISP you're on. I use some, net detective services to find your address. And then I just, like, spam your whole family's phone numbers with whatever bullshit, or I brick all your phones, report them all stolen, or like, and then maybe I go to your ISP and like I flag it or whatever for some criminal activity, and then I say, ha, your Bitcoin node's offline. Like, it's nothing to do with Bitcoin. That's just like a network level attack against somebody. And I got really disgusted by it, because if that became like the way they want to play it, I don't remember that even happening during the block size wars. Not this kind of attack. Not like
that's because it didn't happen to you. That's why. It was happening to the Bitcoin caches.
physical attacks against people's home infrastructure. If that happened, I believe you, but I would have been against it. I think that's taking it way too far, because, I always give this analogy. I remember, being a kid, you're at camp, right? And there's this game that kids play. I don't know if this is a game that hopefully you've never played, but it always seemed to be in like every camp I ever went to, where it's like, I'm going to sneak up behind you. I'm going to kick you in the nuts. And if I can sneak up behind you and kick you in the nuts, then I'm winning. And the only way you can be winning then is if you find a way to sneak up behind me and kick me in the nuts. And now you're winning. And it's just this game where everybody's trying to sneak up. You always have to look, make sure nobody's going to kick you in the nuts, because then you're going to get kicked in the nuts. And it's so funny when somebody like isn't paying attention and gets kicked in the nuts, like, ha, I got you. I fucking hate that game, because even if you win, you're going to get kicked in the nuts a bunch. So I don't even want to play. Like, I don't want to play the kick in the nuts game. I don't win or lose. And that's
you can't opt out. That's the hard part as well.
Play a game where we're going to say, like, how bad can we mess up each other's internet or power bill or phone bill? Because I can think of a lot of very easy ways. I would never do it. I'm an adult. I don't want to be in trouble for whatever criminal activity. But there are a lot of easy ways that a 10-year-old could do if he was smart to jack up somebody's phone or internet bill that almost can't be stopped. It's the only thing stopping it is that it's illegal. I mean, and I don't want to like share some of these methods that we used to do to fuck with each other back in the day, but the infrastructure is not better than it used to be. We could really fuck with each other if we wanted to. And it's just, nobody wins that game. I don't want to have to keep buying a new phone because you brick mine left and right. Like, because I ran a Bitcoin node that you don't like, it's just taking it to that's taking it to a violent physical level. Some people shy away from using violence, but I thought that was disgusting. He has apologized, although I don't think enough. They're still trying to compare it to things like Garbage Man. I don't know if you know what that is.
Yeah, that was with the Libre.
Yeah, it was a Garbage Man node. You run it. It pretends to be a Libre Relay node, but then it doesn't actually forward your transactions. And so those Libre Relay nodes are like
sucks them up,
basically sending their transactions into the wind. They'll never be broadcast. And so it just kind of tricks them into wasting their time, which, they're trying to say is the same kind of attack. I don't think so. Like, it is a way to annoy a node, but annoying a node is different from like knocking somebody's internet offline. With the intent to cost them money. Nobody running a Garbage Man node, which is like 5 people. Nobody running a Garbage Man node is like intending to destroy somebody's home networking infrastructure. They're just like enforcing the rules that they.
Well, it does brick the node in a way.
He's going to broadcast.
It might not necessarily cost them money, but if I don't know, I guess nodes
only if they were only connected to other Garbage Man nodes, then their relay would become worthless.
But wasn't that the idea? If you had enough Garbage Man nodes, you can basically surround.
Sure, that's the theory, but it's never happened. Nobody's ever adopted the Garbage Man.
Well, just being a shitty execution doesn't really justify the idea.
Now, it would become closer to equivalent if somebody like Portland ran like the 10,000 Garbage Man nodes in the cloud, and then specifically found the IP addresses of Libre Relay nodes and tried to peer with all of them. Then it would be close, but still not as bad.
Yes, I agree with you about that.
Because what he did was like way more like intentional and focused and targeted, and he did it with the intent to cost them money. When you run a relay node or a garbage node, you're not intending to like harm someone. You just want to like help the Bitcoin.
Well, you are in a way. The only reason to do it is
but it's not harm.
fuck up someone's node.
That's a different level of harm. You know, I feel like it's harmful when you spam the blockchain, but I don't feel like it's harmful in the same way as it's harmful to like kick down my door. Like, not all harm is equal. You know, it's when you take it to like, you're going to cost me hundreds of dollars on purpose. It's different from like, you're going to make me hold some JPEGs on my node in the mempool.
What about all the money you spend on your hard drive to hold those JPEGs?
It's immaterial. I mean, like over time it does add up, but it's just the magnitude is so different. I mean, and also there's no intent. I don't think when people are spamming JPEGs, they don't intend, like their intention is not to cost me personally hundreds of dollars. They didn't like target my IP and say, I'm going to make JC pay for my JPEGs. Like they just want to spam their JPEGs. Intent matters. I think it's harmful, but they're not intending to cost me personally money. And that's a big difference. Portland was intending to cost these random residential people hundreds of dollars. And it's an evil thing to do.
I have two comments on this. One, people on residential connections that have a limit shouldn't be putting unlimited connections open to the internet. That's stupid. Sure. And secondly, why not? And this can be an open pull request. Like someone can go make this. I don't care enough to do it myself. Why not just take a page out of torrenting clients, which is peer-to-peer technology that's existed forever, and allow people to set like an upload limit? Because you always
can do that. You can do that in Knots, but people didn't. That was
has a toggle on the GUI to do that, and Core does not. So Knots is actually more hardened against this attack than Core. Core can do it in the config file, so you still could do it, but it's easier to defend against on Knots than it is on Core. So if it's not really.
Okay. So this was an issue because people that shouldn't be running nodes because they're not competent enough were running nodes.
That's like saying that nobody should leave their front door unlocked because they think they live in a nice neighborhood. Like nobody usually does this, but it's not exactly. I wouldn't blame the guy who left his door unlocked because some guy thought it was funny to come in and rob him. Like, I mean, sure, you could say, now you should keep your door locked. But if we all know the guy who robbed him, he's on Spaces bragging about it, like, we should also condemn the fuck out of that guy who's like, he left his door unlocked, and I knew he was leaving his door unlocked, and I got like a list of people that use this particular smart lock. And I saw these are unlocked, so I went there and I robbed them just to show them they should lock their fucking smart locks. Very funny,
there's this trustless kind of culture that we're trying to work on here, and then you're talking about essentially a high trust environment.
No, I'm not. I'm talking about communities policing themselves because I wouldn't want, like, my first instinct to that isn't to say, hey, let's call the police. That's technically illegal. He's hurting us, costing us money. My first instinct is to say, as a community, since we are an open community-run initiative, not like relying on government, we should police ourselves. If I see you running around like, wanting to hurt people or death threat people all the time, or like trying to spread like, here's where these people live, let's go like kick down their door and take their Bitcoin nodes out of their house to show them that they should not like run ClearNet or whatever, they should get on Tor. Like, I'm going to tell you, like, bro, no, that's a horrible thing to do. Like, don't do that. We have to police each other as a community because we don't want to have to rely on government to do that. And it's not because I'm like trying to control you, dude. It's just certain things culturally, like, we have to police ourselves. We have to police we are in charge of our ethics for our community as individuals. Like, and it is true, like, okay, people shouldn't, it's probably a good argument why you shouldn't run on ClearNet, but there's advantages to running on ClearNet. And ultimately, it's not that, because you could make the same argument, like, nobody should share IBD data, but that would be horrible for the network. And realistically, nobody usually attacks you by trying to DDoS your IBD. So it's like, in practical reality, just like me using an easy Wi-Fi password at home, in practical reality, it should be fine. But if we started seeing more of these attacks, we'd have to change our behavior. But hopefully this Portland thing was an isolated incident. And because it would be, really bad if we could no longer just allow ourselves to be public because there's so many pieces of shit out there. But to the extent that we know who the pieces of shit are, they make the network worse for everyone. We don't want to have to stop like sharing IDB data or initial block download data. It's the network's better when we can share it. So, and the more we can share it, the better. So, like, I'm not saying like we shouldn't be smart and protect ourselves. And if you're on Comcast, you definitely should put limits. not against that, and that is a silver lining. But what I think is more important is that when we see this kind of behavior in our communities among people that we respect or trust, we should hold them accountable to that, because culture is what drives this thing. And if we, I don't want this to become like how it was when I was a kid and we're all just like swatting each other all the time. Like, that's horrible. I don't think we want that, right? Like, that's the kid playing the kick in the nuts game. So to the extent that we can hopefully discourage that, like not think it's cool when people do that, it helps.
All right, I don't know how much time you have left. We're gonna kill it at 2 hours, but I got to get in one more question then before we kind of move into wrapping up the show, which is
talk about NOTs and what it is and why it's important and what's happening with it.
Well, maybe we'll have to do a follow-up episode, a part 2.
In like 2 minutes, 3 minutes.
Yeah. All right. So tell us a little bit about how NOTs is doing. There was I have a slide here with an announcement from Dennis Porter that he's raised Decentralization Defense Fund $100,000 for NOTs development, and he's aiming for 1 million. This is pretty important because NOTs is doing pretty well by this point in terms of it's building up its own funding. It's got 18% of the running nodes, roughly. Ocean's got 1% of the hash rate. You've got independent developers starting to pop up to assist Luke Jr. Obviously there's arguments about it's all centralized around him, etc. But if more and more contributors are starting to emerge and get active with the project over time, that bodes well for building up a credible team, right? So tell me about this. How is NOTs going from your point of view?
Surprised. So I feel that NOTs is essentially, like, culturally the natural path for anybody who's been a Bitcoin maximalist, principled, Bitcoin only person that understood how Bitcoin works and why Bitcoin works this whole time. Even the core devs originally, if you look at like when op return was first proposed, some people have this misconception where core is actually like pro JPEG and NOTs is like anti JPEG, and so core is like, hey, we want you to be able to put whatever you want on chain as long as you pay the fee, and NOTs is like, no, we don't agree. Actually, both sides are against arbitrary data on chain. It's just core thinks that by increasing the op return limit, they'll be able to funnel more of that activity into a healthier path, whereas NOTs thinks that by continuously being hostile to it, we'll have less spam on chain. So they both, NOTs and core, both don't want spam or arbitrary data. It's just we're dealing with it differently. But the real controversy here isn't the increase in op return limits, which hypothetically, technically, is, if people were to use it, it is superior to storing your JPEGs on the witness data, which you can't prune as easily and costs more for the nodes because it's cheaper fees. You get the discount. Also, if you use op return, you're limited to that 1 megabyte legacy size with no discount. So, and it's provably unspendable, so you can prune it easily. So there are technical advantages to running your spam on op return. The problem is probably nobody's gonna. I mean, like, they already have the infrastructure built up for witness data use, like the ordinals communities, all the ordinals wallets, the plugins. They've spent millions of dollars on tooling for these things. They're not just going to turn around and say, you know what, yeah, let's use op return, which costs us more money, and start and rebuild all of our wallets and ignore all of our old NFTs, and just, like, they're not going to. There's literally no reason why they would do that. And so, like, their idea that maybe some people will use the op return instead is super flawed. I think it's more important to maintain the cultural rejection of that type of use, and keep the threat there that we might at any time make it harder for you to do that. I think that threat alone is one of the things that keeps people from coming and building nonsense spammy things on Bitcoin. I know a lot of Bitcoin Cash guys that would always complain that Bitcoin's not a friendly place for them to build. They want to build certain things. The developers will, like, discourage that or build filters against it, or just not want to process their transactions. It's because of that cultural friction. Not that they couldn't just do it anyway and say, hey, I did it anyway, fuck it, run my shit. You could do that. But if the devs are working against you, that friction makes you not want to do that. And so I believe that friction is important. That friction is upheld in NOTs. And now, right now, NOTs is not going to stop it because it's not the majority. It would have been ideal if core didn't do it. The biggest problem is they went against the community when they did it. So they said, fuck it, it's just a policy change. It's not a consensus chain. We don't need to have any consensus over this. We're just going to do it because we can. Okay, well, that was a big mistake because the users don't agree with that change. They think it doesn't matter what the users want because technically
some of the users.
Yeah.
The users, according to you, some of the users support
and that's what I'm most.
Although not many, maybe. I don't know.
I think it's all. I mean, like, so I've been doing this a long time, and all the chats. I used to hang out, like I said, in the BCH chats, and I am shocked and pleasantly surprised. Almost my faith in Bitcoiners is kind of like encouraged by this, because all around me in so many communities, I'm seeing people that I respect going to Knots, even if they don't like Luke. Even if they don't want to necessarily trust his code as much, they see that what Core is doing is a violation of the trust that they've had, and also it's going in a bad direction culturally. And there will be more nodes probably pop up from this that aren't run by Luke, for those who don't want to trust Luke because they think he's crazy or whatever, or they want more devs. So there will be others, and the important thing is that Core. I'm worried that Core is being taken over by the influence of shitcoin VCs, and that they want to start building shitcoiny things on Bitcoin. They want to start making Bitcoin an easier, better place for those types of things to be built. The Bitcoin community ultimately doesn't want that, except for the shitcoiner ones who love to stamp the word Bitcoin on everything they do. And so Core, if their influence isn't stripped now, they would have a good chance at succeeding in getting to do whatever they want, because they are the majority of the nodes. Well, they wasted all their political capital on this small policy change, and now I think they're going to have a lot harder time implementing any of these shady roll-up type of soft forks that I'm sure that they have been wanting to implement. They've burned their political capital now. I see the Knots movement growing with real adoption. I mean, you can even see it on Twitter. It's not a bunch of bots. These are people that have been in the Bitcoin space, debating against Bitcoin Cash guys and everybody else for years. And almost if you look at the average Bitcoiner Twitter guy that's been known forever, a lot of them are starting to talk about Knots now. It's a few big ones, and most of them work for Bitcoin Magazine or adjacent. Shinobi obviously is a Bitcoin Magazine mouthpiece, but it's he's talking in the wind. When you look at any of the tweets right now, and I know Twitter's not obviously a perfect thing, but when you look at any of the tweets right now, I would expect there to be more pushback from Core supporters. Almost none. You'll see 60 tweets and responses from guys saying "fuck you, run Knots," and 3 of the same people over and over again "no, run Core." It's really seeming to dominate, and that's the part that's shocking me. It genuinely, and of course they're ignoring it. Their strategy is to just pretend it's not real until it goes away. I think they're going to be surprised. All the node in a box companies, Start9, Minode, BTC, Umbral, all of them are starting to run Knots. We're hopefully, I'm encouraged that Cobra's been talking about how Knots is better than Core, and we might get Bitcoin.org.
You gotta seed the
Bitcoin.org isn't going to be
later.
Anymore. What if Bitcoin.org is Knots? And then it has Core on the bottom of the page. Wouldn't that be crazy? They're not going to be able to keep saying this isn't happening. They fucked themselves, man. They thought it didn't matter what Bitcoiners think, and they're finding out what happens when you don't care about the users. I think the users genuinely are against this, and they're speaking up, and that's what you have to do. That's always been the defense. If people say, well, what about the code? What about if somebody took over the the repo? What would you do? It's well, if they started doing things we didn't agree with, we'd run something else. It's always been the defense.
And fork off?
Yes. Time now. They did something we don't like, and we're running something else. It's not perfect. It's essentially just a fork of Core, but I mean, it's a start. And if we can suck that power from Core, that's important, because we're no longer.
That is important.
It's no longer going to be taken for granted that whatever they want goes. And I think we're already past that point. I don't think they can get that influence back, even if they reverse the change. I don't think they'll do. I think they've shot themselves in the foot. I think they think they fucked around, and they're finding out that it actually does matter. Bitcoiners actually will run different software if you do shit they don't like.
Sound like
well, we're gonna find out. I mean, that's right. Exactly. It's very ironic, and I wish we had more time. Again, maybe we can do a part 2 on following up, because there's a lot that we didn't get to at this point. But there's going to be loads more coming, and I'm fascinated. Like I've said on this show, I've been watching the Knots stuff very closely. We did a whole episode about Mechanic and his advocacy and how things were working, whether or not he would be able to create a groundswell of support against them. And hats off to him and to you and to everybody involved, to the extent that you guys are able to prove that you can rally sort of a pleb movement against Bitcoin Core. I'll, recognize that. I think it's fantastic, and maybe you can, maybe you can eventually figure out some small block way to scale Bitcoin. And I don't know. We're going to wait and see, but it's very interesting and of course hilarious for the BCH community to watch.
You guys are loving Core getting beat right now because that was the big thing.
God, it's so good. It's so funny. It's so funny. So I don't know. I sort of feel like, well, we'll see. Like, maybe it is a slow but steady, and then eventually, because at some point it's got to come down to, it's got to get off the relay policy. It's got to come down to a consensus change. Either Bitcoin is ossified as it is, in which case it's probably not viable, period. Or, if BTC is able to have some kind of consensus change, what does not slowly get enough prominence that then Luke and Co can make a consensus change, or does
nobody really
Core
wants
try and put in
consensus change that I see? It's not really if people started pushing for consensus change, they would lose that same energy because
of course.
Plebs
But I'm talking about in the long game. I'm talking about in the long game. Let's say it goes well and Knots sort of slowly replaces Core as the reference implementation. It gets adopted by all the institutions and everything, like in the best case scenario.
So we could get like the CTV soft fork that the Bitcoiners have wanted for a while on Core. We could even see it on Knots first, and maybe even talk to some of the CTV.
That would be fascinating.
It would be, some of the CTV guys have told me, if Luke does CTV, they'll switch over to Knots. So that's a soft fork. Of course, nobody's talking about hard fork. It's not a consensus change, but we would need also more friendly hash power for that. Of course, it's all part of it.
Yes.
But I think Ocean is going to be. I mean, man, I love Ocean. Ocean decentralizes mining. You guys should do an Ocean similar thing. I mean, we don't have time, but
no, I love the idea of Ocean. I've talked about again on that episode with we were talking about Mechanic. I think Ocean is great. I gave him endless praise basically for him and Luke for doing that, because when it comes to the mining specifically, of course, BCH is invested in that equally. But at the moment, we're just such a small percentage of the hash rate that we have no clout in that community. To the extent that you guys can fix up what that. It's better for us. We just don't have the time, money, or bandwidth to deal with it. But if you guys can, that's all good from me. Like, huge thumbs up.
Imagine me and Shinobi and like having to like talk on Twitter today about how Ocean sucks. Like, how do you even? The only thing, I mean, you could say like, oh, it's not gaining adoption, but it is. I mean, like, you can't, as a Bitcoiner, you have to acknowledge it's actually the best way to centralize mining that we have right now. And like, being forced to be against that, like, dude, is just. His strategy isn't working. I mean, I literally am seeing people switch over to Knots because of the shit Shinobi is saying. Like, not even because of us, just because of them.
It's a real counter signal.
They're literally Mr. Hodl's another one on Twitter that's been big Bitcoiner for a while, and he's literally saying fuck the plebs. He's like, people that are like just regular people in the middle. They don't know what's going on. I saw this yesterday. Some guy, he's an older guy, he's a Bitcoin guy, and he just doesn't know what's going on. He asked Mr. Hodl like, hey, can you explain to me this like drama between like Core and Knots? What's going on? And he says, Core is showing people how they don't matter. And if they want to make a change, they're going to make it. So fuck them. And the dude's like, okay, I guess I should probably run Knots then. Like, like, how does this help you? Like, how does the argument, like, why do you think this is a good argument to make? Like, this dude was not like.
Well, it's not about that. That's the funny thing is for those two guys in specifics, they just love whatever is the most condescending position. So they will always go with that kind of.
Nobody's being paid by Bitcoin Magazine to defend that.
Yeah, but he was already like that before he got hired.
No, he was.
That's just how he is. Well,
he was for Core, but he was always more pro Bitcoiner. In the last like 3 years, he was like the Bitcoin maximalist to a lot of people. The toxic Bitcoin maximalist.
Yes, but he's always just been he's always just condescension is essentially baked into his personality.
Bitcoiners are retarded. That's like his last 3-year narrative.
What do you mean?
No.
What do you mean?
Like the last 3
you were just in. You just didn't see it because he was saying all Bitcoin cashes are retarded, or he had some other topic.
Well, sure.
I mean, I don't know the law.
He wasn't saying like the non-Bitcoin cashers are retarded.
That's what I'm saying. The gun is just turned in your direction now, and you're like shock horror. It's like no,
before Knots, even before Knots, his narrative for like the last 4 years that Bitcoiners are retarded, don't listen to maximalists, blah, blah. He's like anti-Maximus now because he's had to be, because he's been defending all of the ordinals and all that bullshit. Like, he doesn't directly defend it, but he makes room for it. He says, hey, if they want to scam, let them scam. Stop crying about it.
Well, anyway, he's got a lot of problems. Okay, we're gonna have to wrap up the show. I see you've got $50 from Jingle Bob in the chat. If you send a BCH address, he'll, or I don't know, maybe he can send it to me and I'll send it to you afterwards. You also have got 100,000 Furu tokens if you want to accept it from Callisti, who was betting against you coming on the show.
I'm not gonna like download whatever weird wallet for that. So like, if he gives those to you, you can have them. Whatever.
Cashnice.com in the browser.
Tell me, just do
it in the browser. Yeah. Or I can side shift it to you if you give me a BTC address. I'll just take what it is. I'll sell it for BCH, and then I'll side shift it to you. And
if there's anything you want me to see, whoever was sending that $50, ask him. If there's anything you want me to see that you think will impress me about BCH, let me know. I've always been one to I run a show called The Shitcoin Insider with Guy Swan in the past. I like to debate with shitcoiners, but I don't just talk shit to them. If they want to show me something cool that you can do on their whatever, I'll try whatever wallet, whatever shop. I'm willing to give you benefit of the doubt. If there's something you want me to check out that you think is cool with BCH, I'll do that, So anyway, I'll download
all right.
Wallet.
Yeah. Jingle Bob, send $50 to the address on bitcoincashpodcast.com at the bottom, and I'll forward it through to him, maybe as BTC via SideShift. We'll see. All right. Okay. We also just very quickly, I don't know if you got a rush or not, man, but if you don't, we have a slide message to the community that is just your open platform to say whatever you want, whatever you think the BCH community needs to hear. Just open slather, 1 or 2 minutes. Go.
Okay. Well, in this podcast episode, we talked about how I don't think larger blocks is a way to go. I don't think it's feasible. I think you guys should start doing layer 2 stuff if you want to be taken at least a little seriously. Obviously, I'm a big Lightning advocate. Lightning works. The ecosystem's doing great. You can scale Bitcoin today with Arc and Lightning. You can do unlimited onboarding, unlimited transactions, keep it very cheap, and you could create, we didn't get to talk about it, but you could create true yield DeFi lending and borrowing markets backed by Bitcoin. You could have billions of dollars of Bitcoin locked, collecting yield, backing the Arc networks, which would also be great for the kind of sort of value properties of it. Bitcoin is doing awesome. Knots movement is doing awesome. I encourage you guys to at least have an open mind, check it out. You don't have to do things the hard way. Bitcoin Cash is trying to do things the hard way. I told this what started me getting on this podcast. You can choose to be a winner.
Yes.
Run, but you don't have to be you don't have to fight for second place or whatever. You can just choose to join the winning team. It's really easy. It's really fun. Bitcoin community has been growing, and it's really, really amazing. You can actually do all the things you want to do on Bitcoin, and you don't have to fight anymore. I guess you have to fight if you want to run knots, apparently, trying not to get DDoS. But, you can choose to be a winner. I hope that you do. And it's good talk.
All right, excellent. So quick mention of the listener survey again, bitcoincashpodcast.com/survey, and the bchbullet.substack.com, which we just put out a new edition of today, our weekly summary of what's going on in BCH. Quick shout out to our FundMe contributors, Majamali Marcelo, Jeremy is made of whatever profits are made of, Molecular, the show we love, Cash Stamps, Keep Building and Broaching, Erdogan Talk, Economics Writer, Big Hair, Love the Show, Love Your Hair, Milton Friedman, Purely Peer, PurelyPeer.cash, Discover the Thrill of Quest Hunting, Find Hidden Cash Drops and Collect BCH, Ryan Giffen, Keep It Up Boys, DGN and FurQ, Fresh Hardcore, BCH Rap Anthem coming at you, The Green Comeback Kids, get it at https w NWB cash. And we had one more as well that I forgot to update on the slides. I'll find it in a second. And yeah, shout out to our supporters and our patrons, Ricky and Kyle, and our General Protocols sponsor, bchbull.com. All right, that's all basically the end stuff. Final shout outs. JC, do you have anyone you want to give a special mention to at the end, or where people can find more of you? Where should they go to get involved in Knots and such.
I'm going to say Jingles is your daddy, if you know Jingles. And that's it. And you can find me on Twitter. I guess you guys have that on your notes.
That's it. Cash Dragon, pump it up. That was the last one. Jet, did you have any shout-outs?
I don't think so, no. Haven't done
My
much this
shout out. Okay, my shout out is to you, JC, for coming on the show, because we've had several before that talked a big game and didn't show. Like, you know, we even had Lorenzo did come on that one with Joel, but then he made a lot of salty excuses afterwards. So I think you're actually, you know, topping the leaderboard right now, where you've come on, and I don't anticipate any need for salt afterwards. So that's a pretty incredible run. Hats off. Well done, mate.
Thanks, man. Yeah, anytime. I enjoy this.
All right. Brilliant. We'll let you get off to breakfast. Thank you all for listening. Till next
time. We
time.
have a song for you.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We have a song. It's a parody, an AI parody of Men North of Richmond, but it's the Knots version.
Oh, so
it's
good.
The Knots version. Yeah, take a listen to this. All right, I'll leave you with who's this from?
Oh, Satoshi.
Camel Finance. Perfect. All right, that's it. Until next time.
My car, so I can mine all day. Overtime hours for break-even pay, so I can sit in the basement, watch those notes relay, spend my sats and drown fear away. It's a damn shame what the car's gotten to for miners like me, no to runners like you. Wish I could just wake up and it not be true, but it's, oh it is, living in the core world with a not soul. I wish corporation would look out for no runner, not rich miners on an island somewhere. Lord, we got plebs on the street, spending sats just to eat, while core devs looking grants for hot air. God, if you're 85, that's your help, bringing stock by the ton. Bitcoin shouldn't pay for your pump and dump run. Now, full notes of pruning, Bitcoin's way to the ground, cause all Mara does is keep on kicking it down. Lord, it's a damn shame what the car's gotten to for miners like me, no to runners like you. Wish I could just wake up and not be true, but it's, oh it is, living in the cold world with the night.